What do you do when your family kicks you out and your husband hands you divorce papers? Emily never expected it. One moment, she was living her life as a housewife. The next, her in-laws were kicking her out, and David, her husband, was handing her divorce papers. But in a strange way, it felt like an opportunity, a chance for her to finally take control. Stay tuned to see how Emily turns this situation around, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping stories. I hate everything about you. Huh? What do you mean? I only live with my own family, so leave right now. To my shock, my in-laws made the decision to kick me out. Even David, my husband, calmly handed me divorce papers. I've already filled out my part. Hurry up and sign the papers. I hadn't expected this, but in a strange way, it felt like an opportunity. My heart was racing, but I signed the divorce papers without hesitation. My name is Emily. I'm 34 years old, and I've been a housewife for 5 years. Married to David, we had no children and had lived alone together for all these years. David had always worked at a company with horrible conditions, long hours, early mornings, late nights. I could see how it wore him down, mentally and physically. It bothered me, so I started looking for ways to help. I found small jobs that I could do from home, like data entry, earning just enough to cover a part-time job's salary. But I didn't stop there. I dove into video editing, learning on my own, slowly building up a steady stream of clients. As I gained experience, I started saving money, and soon after, I began investing. My days were filled with studying, managing investments, and working on video editing projects. The routine wasn't easy, but it was rewarding. I was starting to see the money flow in, especially from the investments. David didn't know how much I was earning, but I could tell he was struggling. One evening, I decided to bring it up. I could cover the rent, I said, trying to ease his burden. You shouldn't have to keep working at that place with such terrible conditions. He blinked at me, confused. No, our finances are fine. You only earn pocket money from your video editing, right? I nodded, but the truth was far from that. Actually, I've been doing well with investments. I have enough to take the load off. You don't need to keep forcing yourself into that job. Nah. David's expression softened, a trace of disbelief flickering across his face. Really? Yes, I'm so grateful for everything you've done. You deserve better than that job. A wave of relief washed over him. He smiled and told me he'd submitted his resignation letter to the company. I felt proud. He had worked so hard, and now things were going to get better. At least, that's what I thought. But that's when everything started to unravel. David was free from the job that drained him, but something shifted. As the days passed, he seemed distant. The spark in our marriage that had once been so bright slowly faded, replaced by silence and tension. I didn't understand it at first. He seemed to resent me, even though I had helped him make the decision to leave. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. The more I tried to reach out, the more he pulled away. And that's when I realized the changes I'd made helping with finances, trying to ease his burden, had only pushed us further apart. The truth was, I had thought I was doing what was best for us. But David didn't need a partner to take control. He needed someone to share the load with him, not do everything for him. I had changed our lives, but I hadn't realized the impact it would have on our relationship. The road ahead didn't seem as clear anymore. Hey, can we move in with my parents? Huh? Well, wait a minute. Do you mean that we're moving to your parents' house? You know that even if you change jobs with my earnings, we can totally live like this together, so there's no need for us to go all the way to your parents' house. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is we can rent a room in the new condo and we are all going to live together. Huh? Take a look at this. With that, David brought a flyer for a recently built tower condo. Are you perhaps thinking of living there? I'm finally able to take good care of my parents by doing this. No, now wait a minute. The rent is $5,000. That's too expensive. But you're earning money through investments, right? You can afford it easily. But... It was certainly not impossible, but it's not like I was dying to live life like a rich person, and I wanted to save up for our child in the future, if I ever had one. Besides, I didn't expect to live with my parents-in-law, and it will only be normal for David to use the money he earned to take care of his own parents. I was a bit disappointed because I felt like he was using me for his own convenience. Do we really have to live with your parents-in-law? What? You don't want to? Well, they were still in good health, right? Even George has a couple of years left before he retires. I've been working so hard at the terrible company that I haven't been able to give much attention to them. Please, please help out for me. David had asked me to do so, and I reluctantly agreed. But as I had expected, this would turn out to be the biggest, baddest choice of my life. Wow, what an amazing place! The scenery is amazing and beautiful. I'm glad that you both are happy about this place. My parents, even though, are overjoyed with their new life in the tower condo. They were very excited the whole day when they first moved in. I am so proud of you, David. You must be making so much money to be able to afford such a luxurious lifestyle. Yeah, I was right beside my husband and poked him with my elbow. David awkwardly told them about the rent for this room is not paid from his earnings. Hearing that, both in-laws had the face. Actually, Anne is the one who is earning the money from investments, and from her earnings we're paying the rent. What? So it's not from your earnings, David? Oh, it's Emily's earnings. My in-laws were shocked when they heard the truth, but I was relieved David told them now rather than later, instead of letting them find out through lies. At first, they were apologetic, especially to me, and I felt like I was making them uncomfortable too. I couldn't help but feel a bit guilty for that, so I told David to reassure them not to worry too much. I had originally started this to help him out with the struggles he was facing at work. I thought it would be good for my in-laws to live more freely, which would in turn make David happy too. But my in-laws weren't satisfied with that. After David talked to them, they grew bolder and more demanding. I actually like my pasta softer, and don't forget the beer. Oh, and I need mayonnaise too. I want this brand bag. Can you buy it for me, Emily? And a golf club too. It felt like they saw me as nothing more than a money machine, someone who could earn a lot for them and be at their service. I wasn't about to let that happen. Well, I said, keeping my tone firm, I'll do my best with housework, but I can't do everything. I want to be a good wife and take care of the chores as best as I can, but we need to be strict with money. If we're not, they'll just become spoiled, and I refuse to spoil my in-laws. I stuck to my decision, but my in-laws weren't pleased. They grew grumpy with me and started complaining to David about how unreasonable I was. Why is she always at home? She says she makes a lot of money, but I doubt it. I bet she's just gambling. I can't believe she has the nerve to show her face when she's just been lucky, pretending like she's all that. It seemed that's what they'd been saying to David behind my back. Meanwhile, David had changed jobs, opting for one that paid less but didn't require overtime. He no longer had to pay for rent or living expenses, so he could spend his entire salary freely. His clothes became more extravagant tailor-made suits, brand shoes, designer bags. David, who had always loved fashion, was thrilled to be able to indulge himself. Since David was living so freely, my parents-in-law began to complain to him about why they couldn't live the same way or afford the luxury items he was buying. And of course, David turned to me, telling me I should go buy things for them as part of taking care of them. But I refused. If you want to take care of them, why don't you do it? You've been using your salary freely, so you should be able to spend it on them. It's a good chance to show how much you care. David frowned at my response. He didn't argue because what I said was true. But if we started buying all sorts of things for his parents, he wouldn't be able to afford his own luxuries anymore. So he asked me to take care of them. But since I refused, David started to become more and more harsh with me. You've been sitting in front of the computer all the time. You're done as a woman if you don't even wear makeup anymore. You think it doesn't matter since you're at home all the time, but if you keep dressing like this, we won't match anymore. Wait a minute, I retorted. What do you mean we won't match? We're always at home, so what does matching even matter? That's how women like you get uglier and uglier. You should always strive to be beautiful. David began to insult me every chance he got. And my in-laws, they noticed and joined in. Why can't you cook better? You may be able to make money, but you're no good as a wife. If you can't handle the chores, then at least do your job as a wife properly. Both my in-laws started to pile on the criticism, and honestly, I was fed up. So, I started to speak up for myself. But it is thanks to me and my earnings that you're all able to live like this now. I think that is the most important thing. I mean, Linda, you're physically healthy and also not working, but you don't do any housework, right? And George, you quit your job, right? What would happen to you if I'm gone? I'm not asking you to respect me or anything, but I don't deserve to be complained to like this. When I said this, my in-laws were shaking, with their faces turning red and unable to say anything. What I said was completely right. After that, my in-laws started talking behind my back to David whenever I wasn't around. Their voices were loud enough for me to overhear, especially when they gathered in the living room. Who does she think she is? That woman! She makes fun of us all the time, and it really pisses me off. Even the other day, she was saying things to us like she was mocking us. She's changed. She got cocky just because she made money from gambling. So, if she can make that much money, then we should be able to make a lot too if we study a little and start trading FX, right? Yeah, exactly. She did it, so we can do it too. We should start now. I couldn't believe my ears. Investing and gambling are two entirely different things. It's not something that can be learned in a day or by just studying a little bit. George and David, who both worked in companies, should have known better. From that point on, both my in-laws and my husband became extremely competitive with me. Even during breakfast, they'd say, "I need to check the stock prices. I have to check it before anyone else does." And then they'd pull out their laptops right on the dining table to start checking. I began to feel like an outsider in my own family. If they were going to hustle against me like this, I didn't belong there. But amidst all of this, I was about to uncover an unexpected, shocking truth. It happened one day when I took a break and went out with a friend. I had heard there was an event for my favorite anime, so I decided to get away from work for a while. As I was walking down the street, I happened to spot my husband in front of a brand store. He had just come out, carrying another branded item. Again, he should have been investing the money, not buying luxury goods. I stood there staring at him, thinking this to myself, when suddenly a young woman appeared from behind him. She wrapped her arms around him. My heart dropped. Panic surged through me. I ducked into the shadows with my friend, quickly pulling out my phone to take photos. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I knew things weren't great between David and me, but I never imagined it would be this bad. I had always believed, despite our issues, that he loved me as his wife. But I was wrong. David wasn't just neglecting me, he was having an intimate relationship with another woman. Not with me, but with her. It felt like something inside me broke. The thought of being with a man like that, of living with his parents, someone who treated me like this, was unbearable. From that day on, I started looking for my own apartment, a place where I could live for myself. I stopped caring for my in-laws. I stopped doing any housework. Why should I? They had never appreciated me, and now, with everything I had learned, I was done. My in-laws were furious. David was furious. Then, one day, they summoned me. "What with your attitude lately? Every single thing you do or say makes me angry. You were too cocky for a wife. Mom and Dad are right. You're getting a little carried away." And Linda started to raise her voice. "I hate everything about you." "Huh? What do you mean? I only live with my own family, so leave right now." To my surprise, my in-laws decided to kick me out. My husband, David, had even politely prepared divorce papers for me to sign. "I've already filled out my part. Hurry up and sign the papers. It was something I didn't wish for, but it was an opportunity for me. I signed the divorce papers as soon as I received them." "Well done. Just get up quickly, okay?" I said as I began to pack my bags. "Now this house will finally be ours. Now she's out of the way, let's have some expensive dinner to celebrate." The in-laws started to talk in a loud voice again so that I could hear them. I packed my bags without a care in the world. For now, I will take only what I need. I'll call the conductor to pick up the rest of my belongings on another day. As I said this, my in-laws looked at me with a victorious look on their faces and laughed and said, "Do it as fast as you can!" It's very strange how people can be so smug when you think about it calmly. It's them who would be the one losing. I'm thinking I guess they're just stupid. Well, anyways, I will prepare and get ready to show them what hell is. I went back to my parents' house for the time being. Then, I went with the conductor to the tower condo and had the rest of my stuff hauled away. "So now this room is completely ours," David says with a huge grin on his face. I said, "Oh, by the way, we haven't finished talking about divorce yet." and I put the evidence of David's affair in front of him that I had received from the detective agency. Oh, no. David was completely mortified by the photographic evidence of his own affair. We will get a divorce, but after I get the proper alimony for what you've done. My parents-in-law had no idea that their own son was having an affair, and their faces were pale. No, no way! How come you know about my affair? You just thought that you wouldn't get caught because I was always home? You weren't an idiot for walking around town with her arms around you confidently. Let's talk about the rest through our lawyers. My in-laws interrupted me when I said that. David, ignore what this woman says because we have a shot of getting back at her. You're right. What did she mean by having a shot of getting back at me? Then David says something that surprised me. If I invest about $50,000 in margin trading, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars all at once. You are in big trouble if you gamble like that. I was about to advise them, but decided not to because you make mistakes. You gain knowledge and practical ways to invest. It will be expensive, but a good way to learn for David and his parents. I hope it all goes well. I said this and headed for the front door to leave the house. They all went out of their way to follow me and said, "Now I want to be disrespected by you, and I'll be more successful than you." I ignored them and went straight out of the house and back to my parents' house. Later, through my lawyer, I filed a claim for alimony against my husband and his mistress. I made it clear that David was to blame, and there would be no division of property. According to my lawyer, they looked like they could afford it, and to my surprise, they agreed to pay me the alimony in full, with no arguments about property. Maybe they had just closed a successful merchant deal, I thought. But apparently, they hadn't, and instead planned to settle the alimony first before doing so. For my part, I was grateful I didn't have to pay them a dime. The alimony came through quickly, and I decided to invest the money. Thanks to my wise investments, I was able to earn even more and save up again. I moved into a simple apartment, no need for a fancy tower condo. It was just a regular place, but it was mine, and it was all I needed. From that point on, I spent my days living freely, just as I wanted. Then, out of nowhere, my ex-husband contacted me. Thinking I had forgotten to block his number, I reluctantly answered. Hello? And help me. What happened? I screwed up big time with immersion trading. I'm $50,000 in debt. I'm completely sunk. Oh, what a disaster. How did you manage to gamble like this, especially after all those years of winning? He sighed. For the record, it wasn't gambling. I studied it properly, made calculations, predictions. I invested smartly. You can't just invest like you're playing the lottery and expect to win. Unbelievable! And now, please, please come back. If this continues, we're going to lose the contract for the $5,000 tower condo. That's the best outcome, don't you think? You know, because you can't afford it on your earnings. My parents aren't convinced, and they're going to pressure me to do another round of merchant trading. Oh dear, you better stop them. But that's no longer my concern. It's your job to deal with your parents now. Goodbye. Hey, he called, but I had already hung up. Later, our mutual friend told me that David's parents, despite his pleas, went ahead with another round of merchant trading. It failed again, adding another $30,000 in debt. And of course, their beloved tower condo was rented under David's name. This wasn't a win for me at all. David and his family were now buried in debt, with David pouring all his income into repaying it. His mistress, unsurprisingly, abandoned him. He had to work from morning till night, living the same miserable life he had before. His parents? They were also working non-stop to pay off their debts. It was exactly what they deserved, and I had zero sympathy for them. At the end of it all, they finally understood the reality of investments. Too bad it didn't matter anymore. They wouldn't have the resources to invest again in the future. On the other hand, I continued to make money through investments. I had earned enough that I no longer needed to work. From now on, I planned to focus on my hobbies and enjoy a comfortable, semi-retired life. It made me wonder, why do men always look down on their wives, thinking they're more capable than we are? It seems to me that supporting a wife who knows how to make money would lead to a much happier marriage. But David? He was just another man who cheated on his wife, an idiot who couldn't control himself. I'm so glad I left him. I hope he regrets everything and that I can enjoy my own life in peace and retirement. What do you do when the person you loved, the one you thought you could count on, turns out to be the very one dragging you down? When the same person who was supposed to be your partner in life becomes a burden, using you and then betraying you? Emily spent years believing that by helping her husband, David, she was doing the right thing. She worked hard, built a career, and even covered their expenses so he could leave his toxic job. But in return, all she got was resentment, distance, and eventually, betrayal. The turning point came when David, instead of being grateful, asked her to continue supporting his parents while he indulged in luxuries on her dime. The final straw came when Emily discovered David's affair. That moment shattered the illusion of their marriage, but instead of wallowing in despair, Emily took action. She walked away, filed for alimony, and built a life for herself. Now, she's thriving, using the money she earned wisely and living life on her terms. But what about David and his family? They're drowning in debt, forced to face the consequences of their actions. David is left struggling in the same miserable job, while his parents, who had relied on Emily's generosity, are now paying the price. So, what do you think? If you were in Emily's shoes, would you have stayed or walked away sooner? Do you believe it's possible to build a healthy relationship where both partners truly support each other? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
Fine, then just do it already. Ethan's voice boomed from the kitchen into the living room, where I sat going through last week's expenses. Do what? I fired back, not looking up. You should transfer the money to her account. You know she's struggling. You gave her almost everything, didn't you? I closed my laptop, exhaling sharply. I don't think that's necessary, he said, his tone ice cold. He walked into the room, hand running through his messy hair. You're really cold-hearted, you know that? I flicked my eyes to him, challenging him silently. He didn't respond, just shook his head and walked away, leaving the tension in the air. The past few years of our marriage had been smooth. Ethan managed a bustling local cafe. I worked as a software developer. Our routines were mundane but comforting, until yesterday. It all started when our doorbell buzzed while we were having dinner. Ethan went to answer it, and I heard a woman's voice, shaky but familiar. Moments later, Ethan walked into the dining room, his sister Lindsay trailing behind. Rachel, this is Lindsay, Ethan said softly, barely able to look me in the eye. She needs a place to stay for a while. Lindsay, whom I had only heard about in passing, stood there looking much older than her 35 years. Her eyes darted around, never settling on anything for too long. She held onto a large duffel bag, knuckles white from the grip. I forced a smile. Of course, Lindsay, make yourself comfortable. Hours later, Ethan and Lindsay were talking in the kitchen while I sat stiffly on the couch, pretending to watch a show. Their voices were hushed, but I could catch bits and pieces. Something about financial distress, emotional burnout. None of it felt right. So, how long do you think she's staying? I asked Ethan as we got ready for bed. Not sure, he responded, his voice tired. Just until she gets back on her feet. I nodded, turning off the bedside lamp. Something gnawed at me, a sense of unease I couldn't shake off. The next morning, our usual routine was disrupted. Lindsay was already in the kitchen, making herself at home. Good morning, Rachel, she greeted with an unsettlingly cheerful tone. Morning, Lindsay, I replied, putting on a neutral mask. I grabbed my coffee and headed to my office, giving Ethan a quick peck on the cheek. See you tonight. Work was my solace. The lines of code calmed my racing thoughts, but Lindsay's sudden appearance crept in now and then. Every time I tried to focus, the image of her standing limply at our doorstep popped into my mind. When I returned home, I found Ethan and Lindsay laughing over some old stories. They didn't notice me come in. The scent of dinner wafted through the air, but I felt no appetite. Anything I need to know about your sister's return? I asked Ethan later that night. He sighed heavily. Lindsay's been through a lot, job losses, a rough divorce. She just needs time. But why now? I pressed. Why not reach out sooner? Rachel, please, he almost pleaded. Just give her a chance. I closed my eyes, biting my lip. There was more to Lindsay's story, more than Ethan wanted to admit. I decided to keep a close eye on her. For now, I would play the supportive wife, but I knew I'd need to dig deeper. Lindsay was a storm brewing, and I could sense that she would disrupt the calm we had built. Over the next few days, my discomfort about Lindsay's presence only grew. Ethan's sister settled in like she had never left. I observed, my senses tuned to each interaction, every little change in the atmosphere of our home. Tensions were already simmering beneath the surface. One morning, I found Lindsay lounging on the sofa, remote in hand, feet propped up on the coffee table. "Rachel, could you pass me some water?" she asked, not even glancing away from the TV. I bit back a sharp retort, grabbed a glass of water, and handed it to her. "Here," I said, my voice clipped. "Thanks," she replied absent-mindedly. Ethan wasn't aware of these small moments. Whenever he was around, Lindsay transformed into the picture of humility, polite, and grateful. But when we were alone, a different side of her emerged. One evening, after dinner, Ethan had to rush back to the cafe to handle a staffing issue. Lindsay and I were left alone. I cleaned up, and she sat at the table flipping through a magazine. "So, Rachel, have you thought about letting me borrow your car, just for a couple of days till I get things sorted?" Lindsay asked, her tone casual but laced with expectation. "I don't think that's a good idea," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "We need it for work." "Right," she said, smirking slightly. "Ethan mentioned your job. A software developer, huh? Sounds demanding." "It is," I said, sensing some form of judgment in her words. "Must be nice," she added, not looking up. "Having a stable job and all." "I work hard for it," I countered, wiping the table a little too forcefully. "I'm sure you do," she returned, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place. "Just don't be too harsh on Ethan. He's always been a bit naive, you know." My hands froze, but I didn't rise to the bait. I finished my task in silence, leaving her still seated at the table. That night, as Ethan and I climbed into bed, I could feel the invisible weight of an impending storm. Another argument flared between Ethan and me a few days later. "Lindsay needs our support," he insisted, his patience wearing thin. "It's not about support," I argued back. "It's about boundaries. She's becoming a burden." "She's my sister, Rachel. We can't just throw her out because she's inconvenient," he stated firmly. In the days that followed, Lindsay's behavior only became more problematic. She stayed up late, making noise that kept us awake. I'd find the kitchen a mess after she cooked. She seemed to have little regard for the home we had so carefully maintained. "Ethan, you have to talk to her," I said one night, frustration boiling over. "I will, I promise," he said, tiredly rubbing his temples. But I knew he wouldn't. His blind spot for his sister was too large. One particularly exhausting evening, after catching Lindsay rummaging through my belongings in our bedroom, I had to force myself to stay calm. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Just looking for some socks," she replied innocently, though her eyes told a different story. "We have a guest room for a reason, Lindsay. Please respect our space," I said, my voice hard. Lindsay didn't respond, just gave me a small smile that didn't reach her eyes and walked out. As I lay in bed that night, Ethan asleep beside me, I knew I needed to take action. Lindsay was becoming more than just a nuisance. She was a threat to the peace and stability of our home, and I wasn't going to let her tear everything apart. It was just a matter of how much more I could take before reaching my breaking point. The tension in the house was as sharp as a knife edge. Ethan was drifting away, drawn into Lindsay's world of manipulation. It was subtle at first, small remarks and suggestions, but over time it became clear Lindsay had a plan. One Saturday morning, Ethan sat down next to me with a sigh. "Rachel, Lindsay thinks she's overstaying her welcome," he began cautiously. "Does she?" I replied, folding my arms. "She suggested that maybe we could help her get back on her feet by giving her some financial help," he said, looking uneasy. "No, Ethan? She's been here for weeks, and all she's done is create chaos," I replied sharply. "She needs to show some initiative and find a job." Later, I overheard Lindsay talking to Ethan in the kitchen. "Ethan, I feel like a burden, but Rachel, she's being so cold," she said softly, sniffling as if she was on the verge of tears. "She's just stressed, Linz," Ethan replied, trying to console her. "I don't think she wants me here. I'll leave if that's what you both want," she said, sounding pitiful. Ethan hesitated. "No, we'll figure something out. Rachel just needs time." That evening, I found Lindsay rifling through our living room drawers. "What are you looking for, Lindsay?" I asked pointedly. "I was just trying to find a pen," she responded, a hint of defiance in her eyes. "Next time, ask," I said. She shrugged, the smirk playing on her lips, ever so slight, but I caught it. Dinner was a silent affair until Lindsay decided to stir the pot further. "You know, Ethan, I overheard some people at the cafe talking. They said Rachel spends a lot of time with her male colleagues after work," she said casually, setting her fork down and giving me a sideways glance. I felt the accusation like a slap. "Excuse me?" I snapped. "Oh, did I misunderstand?" "My mistake," she said, feigning innocence. Ethan looked troubled, his eyes darting between Lindsay and me. "Rachel, is there something I should know?" he asked, his voice low. "Seriously, Ethan, you're going to believe this nonsense?" I replied, my frustration hitting its peak. Lindsay's smirk returned. "I'm sorry. I must have misheard," she added, pouring fuel on the fire. After dinner, I cornered Ethan. "You know she's trying to turn you against me, right?" I said, my voice trembling with anger. "She's just stressed, Rachel. She didn't mean it," he said, rubbing his forehead. "Open your eyes, Ethan. She's manipulating you." I shouted it without caring if Lindsay could hear. The argument spiraled, with me accusing and Ethan defending. Lindsay's presence in our home became the tipping point for constant stress and bickering between us. One evening, I returned home to find Lindsay sprawled on the couch, chatting on her phone. "Yeah, they're out of town this weekend," she said, her eyes meeting mine before quickly looking away. "Who are you talking to?" I demanded. She ended the call abruptly. "Just a friend," she said, standing up. "Just a friend? Or are you making plans behind our backs?" I shot back. "Calm down, Rachel. It's nothing," she replied, but there was a knowing glint in her eyes. That night, as I tried to sleep beside an oblivious Ethan, I knew I was reaching my limit. Her subtle digs, the way she wrapped Ethan around her finger, it all pushed me closer to the edge. The house had turned into a battleground, and I was out of patience. Time was running out, and something had to change. I couldn't sit back and let Lindsay poison our lives any longer. It was time to take control before she destroyed everything we had built. The breaking point came faster than I expected. I came home to find Lindsay seated at the dining table, Ethan nowhere in sight. She looked up with a sly smile. "Rachel, you're home early," she said, her voice tinged with mock surprise. Before I could respond, she added, "I was hoping we could talk." I dropped my bag, feeling the tension coil in my stomach. "What's there to talk about, Lindsay?" She leaned back, folding her arms. "I need money," she said bluntly. "A lot of it. I have debts that won't go away on their own." I stared at her, disbelief and rage mingling. "How much are you talking about?" "10,000 should do," she replied, her tone casual. "I promise I'll pay you back once I'm on my feet." "No way," I said, shaking my head. "That's out of the question." Lindsay's face hardened. "Ethan will do it if you won't," she said, eyes narrowing. "And what makes you think he'll go behind my back?" I challenged. She shrugged. "You'd be surprised what a brother would do for his sister." At that moment, Ethan walked in, holding groceries. He looked between us, sensing the hostility. "What's going on?" "Lindsay wants $10,000, I said, not taking my eyes off her. Ethan's face went pale. "That's a lot of money, Linz." "I need it, Ethan. Desperately," Lindsay pleaded, turning her gaze on him with those manipulative eyes. "Would you really leave me stranded?" "Ethan, we can't. This has to stop," I said firmly. "We'll figure something out, Lindsay," he told her, avoiding my gaze. I felt a wave of fury. "Are you seriously considering this?" Lindsay turned to me, her voice dripping with venom. "You don't control him, Rachel." I grabbed my coat. "We'll talk about this later, Ethan. I need some air." I stormed out, my mind racing. As I walked, I knew something had to change. Lindsay was tearing us apart, and Ethan was blind to it. Later, Ethan and I confronted each other in the kitchen. "We can't keep going like this," I said, my voice raw. "She needs to leave." "Rachel, she's my sister," Ethan shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "I can't just abandon her." "Then maybe it's time to choose," I said quietly. "Her or us?" His eyes flashed with pain and indecision. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious, Ethan. She's destroying our marriage." That night, I began digging into Lindsay's past. I called a friend who worked in finance, asking for any information on Lindsay's dealings. The results were shocking. Lindsay had been involved in several financial scams, always slipping away before being caught. Armed with this evidence, I knew I had to confront Ethan. As we sat down the following evening, I laid out what I'd found. "I don't believe it," he said, shaking his head. "Lindsay wouldn't do this." "There's more," I pressed. "She's been manipulating you for years. Look at the pattern." Ethan looked at the papers, his face crumbling. "This can't be true." "It is," I said gently. "You need to see her for who she really is." Torn between his loyalty to his sister and the undeniable evidence before him, Ethan looked lost. "What do we do?" "We need to confront her," I said. "She can't stay here." Ethan nodded slowly, the weight of the truth settling in. We walked to the living room together, ready to face Lindsay and expose her deceit. This confrontation would be the turning point, one way or another. Ethan and I entered the living room, ready for the confrontation. Lindsay was scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of the storm about to crash down on her. "Lindsay, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Lindsay looked up, an eyebrow raised. "What's this about?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Rachel found something out. We need to discuss it." "About what?" she asked, her face an image of manufactured innocence. I stepped forward, handing her the documents. "Your financial history, the scams, the lies." Her eyes flicked over the pages. For a moment, her mask slipped, and fear flashed across her face. But she quickly recovered. "This is a misunderstanding. I can explain." "Enough, Lindsay," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I've been defending you, but these facts don't lie." "You're really going to believe her over me?" Lindsay shot back, eyes narrowing. "Your own sister?" Ethan's face contorted with pain. "Why, Lindsay? Why did you do this?" She dropped the documents and stood up, anger radiating from her. "What choice did I have? You wouldn't understand. You've always had everything handed to you." "That's not true," Ethan said, shaking his head. Lindsay's laugh was cold. "Isn't it? Mom and Dad doted on you while I was left picking up the pieces. You owe me, Ethan. You owe me for all those years." "No," Ethan said, with a newfound strength. "I owe you nothing for your deceit." I stepped in. "It's time for you to leave, Lindsay. You've overstayed your welcome and soured our home." "You think you're so perfect," Lindsay spat, turning her fury on me. "This isn't over." I held her gaze. "Yes, it is. Pack your bags and leave." Ethan stood beside me, his resolve now hardened. "She's right. It's time to go." Lindsay looked between us, realizing she had lost. She grabbed her bag, stuffing her belongings inside. "You'll regret this, both of you," she said, her voice full of venom. "We'll survive," Ethan replied, his voice steady. As she walked out the door, Lindsay turned one last time, her eyes flashing with hatred. "I'll be back," she promised. "Just go," I said, shutting the door behind her. The house felt lighter immediately, but the damage lingered in the air. Ethan slumped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. How did it go so wrong? I sat beside him, placing a hand on his back. "We'll get through this," I said softly. "We'll rebuild." He looked up, eyes filled with remorse. "I should have seen it. I'm so sorry, Rachel." "We both missed the signs," I acknowledged, "but now we move forward." The next days were difficult. We had to confront the fallout of Lindsay's stay and the rift it had caused. Ethan and I avoided deep conversations, focusing on mundane tasks and routines. One morning, as we sat in silence over breakfast, Ethan spoke up. "I think we need help. Counseling, maybe." I looked at him, recognizing the sincerity in his eyes. "I agree," I said. "We can't heal this alone." Taking his hand, we made the decision to seek professional help. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we were committed to finding our way back to each other, repairing what Lindsay had tried to destroy. The therapist's office was a neutral haven, beige walls and soft lighting, creating a calming atmosphere. Dr. Sandra Green, our therapist, was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a steady demeanor. Ethan and I sat on the couch, feet almost touching but not quite. "So what brings you both here today?" Dr. Green asked, looking between us. Ethan took a deep breath. "We need help. My sister Lindsay has caused a lot of turmoil in our marriage. We need to find a way to heal." Dr. Green nodded. "Tell me about Lindsay and what happened." I shared the events of the past few weeks, from Lindsay's arrival to the discovery of her deceit. Dr. Green listened intently, making notes occasionally. When I finished, Ethan added, "I feel guilty. I let her manipulate me, and it nearly ruined us." Dr. Green put down her pen. "Let's focus on rebuilding trust. It's important to address the emotions you're both feeling." Through therapy sessions, we worked on our communication. We learned to express our feelings without anger and to listen without judgment. It was grueling, but I began to see glimpses of the bond we once had. One evening, after a particularly challenging session, Ethan and I sat in the living room, a comfortable silence between us. "Thank you for sticking with this," he said quietly. "I'm committed to us, Ethan. We can get through this," I replied, squeezing his hand. As the weeks passed, I found myself slowly letting go of the resentment I held towards Lindsay. However, one day, a phone call shattered our fragile peace. Ethan answered and immediately went pale. "Lindsay, what do you want?" he asked, his voice strained. I could hear her voice shrill and demanding through the phone. "I need help, Ethan. I'm in trouble. Serious trouble." Ethan looked at me, conflicted. I shook my head firmly. "No, Ethan. We can't go through this again." "You heard Rachel. You can't drag us down anymore," he said into the phone. "You can't do this to me," Lindsay screamed. "I'm your sister. Lindsay, you need to sort out your own life." "We're done," Ethan said, ending the call. He looked at me, anguish etched on his face. "I feel terrible, but I know it's for the best." "You did the right thing," I said, embracing him. "She needs to learn to stand on her own." Days turned into weeks, and slowly our lives returned to a semblance of normal. Then, one evening, we received another call, this time from Ethan's old friend, Mark. "Ethan, I hate to be the one to tell you, but Lindsay is in bad shape. She got mixed up with some dangerous people." Ethan's face went white. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice trembling. "She's been trying to con people, and it backfired badly. She's looking for help, but, honestly, I don't know how much anyone can do now." Ethan hung up the phone, sitting down heavily. "This is what I was afraid of." I sat next to him. "It's harsh, but Lindsay's choices led her here." We learned that Lindsay had been arrested, seeking help too late, entangled in a mess of her own making. Ethan and I watched, both saddened and relieved. As we continued our therapy, Dr. Green helped us focus on moving forward. "You can't change the past," she said, "but you can decide how it shapes your future." Ethan and I took her words to heart. We worked harder on our relationship, setting clear boundaries and learning to trust again. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, we grew stronger. While Lindsay's downfall was tragic, it became a catalyst for understanding and growth in our marriage. Together, we faced the shadows of betrayal and began crafting a new chapter, one built on the lessons we'd learned and the resilience we discovered within ourselves. Ethan and I walked into Dr. Green's office for what felt like the 100th time. Today felt different. There was a heaviness, the knowledge that we were on the brink of a major decision. "Rachel, Ethan, how are you both?" Dr. Green asked, her warm smile suggesting she already knew the complexity of our feelings. "Confused, conflicted," I admitted, "but we're here to figure it out." Ethan nodded. "We need clarity." Dr. Green put her pen down. "Let's talk about what you need from each other moving forward." I took a deep breath. "I need to feel safe in our relationship, Ethan. No more surprises, no more manipulations from outside influences." Ethan reached for my hand. "And I need to know you're with me, Rachel, through thick and thin." I squeezed his hand. "Always, if it means we can rebuild trust." Dr. Green nodded approvingly. "It sounds like you're ready to make some difficult choices. What about Lindsay's influence?" This was the moment. I turned to Ethan. "Lindsay can't be a part of our lives if we're going to heal. She needs to seek professional help." Ethan swallowed hard. He looked at me, anguish clear on his face, but eventually nodded. "It's what we have to do." That evening, back at home, Ethan made the call. It was short and definitive. "Lindsay, this is how it has to be. You need to get professional help. We can't be involved anymore." I watched him hang up, feeling both relief and sorrow. "I hope she gets the help she needs," Ethan said wearily, sinking into the couch. "We did everything we could," I reassured him. As the days turned into weeks, we focused on healing. Every morning, I would catch Ethan looking reflective, but he would also smile more easily. One Saturday morning, Ethan suggested, "Let's go for a walk, just the two of us." We walked hand in hand through a nearby park, the crisp autumn air invigorating us. "I missed this," I admitted. "Me too," Ethan said, squeezing my hand. "We'll make new memories, Rachel, better ones." Our walks became a ritual, a way to reconnect and reaffirm our commitment to each other. One afternoon, we decided to visit Jamie, my close friend and confidant, who had been supportive through this ordeal. "Come in, you guys." Jamie greeted us warmly, leading us into her cozy living room. "How are things?" she asked, genuine concern in her eyes. "We're taking it one day at a time," I said honestly. Jamie gave a knowing nod. "You've both been through the ringer. It's good to see you're working on it." We spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and sharing stories. It was a relief to be with friends who supported our journey. Later, when we were home, Ethan looked at me, his eyes filled with determination. "I want us to keep growing, Rachel. No more shadows." "Agreed," I said, feeling the weight of his words. No more shadows. We continued our sessions with Dr. Green, each one bringing us closer and helping us rebuild. We learned to trust again, not just in each other, but in our future. Eventually, we felt strong enough to talk about the next steps. "We should consider renewing our vows," Ethan suggested one day. "A fresh start." I smiled at the idea. "I think that's a wonderful idea." As we stood in front of a small group of friends and family, reaffirming our commitment, I felt the weight lift completely. We had faced betrayal, confronted our deepest fears, and come out stronger. To new beginnings we toasted, clinking our glasses together. In that moment, I knew that the shadows of betrayal had finally lifted, giving way to the bright promise of a future we would build together, free from the darkness of the past. The fresh start Ethan and I had hoped for was beginning to take shape. We focused on our healing, attending couples therapy regularly, and working on our communication. Each passing day brought us a little closer. One afternoon, as we were heading to our therapy session, Ethan's phone rang. It was his old friend, Mark, again. Ethan answered, his face growing tense as he listened. "What's going on?" I asked after he ended the call. "Lindsay's in deeper trouble," Ethan said, his voice heavy. "She tried to con someone, and they didn't take it well. She's in real danger, Rachel." I felt a pang of anger mixed with pity. "What are we supposed to do about it?" Ethan sighed. "I don't know, but we can't go back to that chaos. She needs to face the consequences." We went through our therapy session, trying to stay focused, but I could see the worry etched on Ethan's face. Dr. Green noticed it too. "Ethan, what's troubling you today?" she asked gently. "Lindsay's in trouble again," he admitted. "I feel guilty for cutting her off, but I also know we can't help her anymore." Dr. Green nodded empathetically. "It's natural to feel conflicted, but remember why you made that decision. You need to protect your own well-being." After the session, we walked in silence, each lost in our thoughts. "Do you think she'll ever change?" Ethan asked suddenly. "I hope so, for her sake," I replied, squeezing his hand. "But we've done all we can." A few days later, we received a call from the local police. Lindsay had been arrested again, this time for fraud. I watched as Ethan took the call, his face a mask of pain and resignation. "Thank you, officer," he said before hanging up. "Lindsay's being held on serious charges." I reached out, holding his hand. "We have to let her face the music, Ethan." "I know," he said, tears welling up, "but it hurts." Time passed, and Lindsay's troubles remained a distant shadow. Ethan and I continued to strengthen our bond, finding joy in the simple things we once took for granted. We decided to attend a couples retreat recommended by Dr. Green. "Welcome, everyone," the retreat facilitator greeted us warmly. "This weekend is about reconnecting, rebuilding trust, and finding joy in your partnership." We participated in exercises designed to foster communication and understanding. One activity involved writing letters to each other, expressing our hopes and fears. "Dear Ethan," I began, pouring my heart onto the paper. "I admire your strength and your willingness to fight for us. We've faced so much, but I believe in our future together." When we exchanged letters, I saw tears in Ethan's eyes. "Rachel, your words mean everything to me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your letter is beautiful, Ethan," I replied, my own tears falling. By the end of the retreat, we felt more connected than ever. We stood on a hill overlooking a serene lake, holding hands as the sun set. "This feels like a new beginning," Ethan said softly. "It does," I agreed. "We've come so far." Back home, the weeks turned into months, our relationship growing stronger. We began planning future projects together, talking about travel, hobbies, and even starting a family someday. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the stars, Ethan turned to me. "I never thought we'd make it through all of this," he admitted. "But we did," I said, smiling, "and we're stronger for it." We received one final piece of news about Lindsay. She had finally checked herself into a rehabilitation program, facing the reality of her actions. Maybe this is the turning point she needs, Ethan said hopefully. Let's hope so, I replied, grateful for the closure. With each day, we moved forward, creating a future built on resilience and love. Together, we had weathered the storm, emerging stronger and ready for whatever lay ahead. As we looked toward the horizon, we knew that the shadows of betrayal had finally faded, leaving only the bright promise of new beginnings. I took a deep breath, smoothing my hands over my navy blue skirt suit as I stepped into the bustling state building lobby. Today was the big day, my interview for the senior correspondent position at the governor's office. This opportunity could be a game changer for my career. As a single mom, balancing work and raising my 8-year-old daughter Haley was a constant juggling act, but I was determined to make it work. The assistant at the front desk greeted me with a polite smile. "Miss Carter, the governor's team is ready for you upstairs," I nodded, mustering my most confident expression. "Thank you, I'm ready." As I made my way to the elevators, my phone vibrated in my purse, probably Haley checking in from school. I pulled it out to check the caller ID, and my heart skipped a beat. It was Haley's number, but much too early for her to be out already. "Mom, please come home. I heard everything." Haley's small voice trembled through the speaker, laced with fear. "What do you mean, sweetie? What happened?" "It's Keith. He hurt me. I heard him talking about something bad." The world around me seemed to freeze as the weight of her words sank in. Keith, my charismatic boyfriend of 6 months, had always been so warm and caring towards Haley, but the terror in her voice was unmistakable. "Haley, I'm on my way right now," I said, my voice shaking. "Stay hidden and don't let Keith see you, okay?" Without a second thought, I bolted out of the building, the governor's interview forgotten. My mind raced as I jumped into my car, scenarios of what could have happened flashing through my mind. How could I have been so blind? Keith had seemed like the perfect guy, kind, successful, even getting along well with my ex-husband Peter for Haley's sake. But now, my little girl's words echoed in my ears, a sickening pit forming in my stomach. I had to get to her, and fast. I burst through the front door of our modest suburban home, my heart pounding. "Haley? Haley, where are you?" A small figure emerged from the hallway closet, tears streaming down her face. Haley ran into my arms, trembling. "Mommy, I was so scared." I held her tight, stroking her hair. "It's okay, baby. I'm here now. What happened?" Haley sniffled, her little hands clutching my blouse. "Keith came home early from work. Spat. He was yelling on the phone about some money problems. Then he started throwing things around the living room." A chill ran down my spine. In all our months together, I had never seen that side of Keith. "I tried to stay quiet in my room," Haley continued, "but then he came in and grabbed my arm really hard." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing angry red marks. White-hot fury coursed through me at the sight of those marks on my baby's delicate skin. How could he lay a hand on her? "Haley, I'm so sorry," I whispered fiercely, holding her close. "This will never happen again, I promise." The front door opened and Keith walked in, his expression changing from confusion to feigned concern when he saw us huddled together. "Jenna? What's going on?" I met his gaze with steel in my eyes. "How dare you put your hands on my daughter?" Keith's face contorted in mock bewilderment. "What are you talking about?" Haley must be making things up again for attention. He knelt down, his voice taking on that sickly, sweet tone he used to manipulate. "Isn't that right, princess? You know I'd never hurt you." Haley shrank back against me, her eyes wide with fear. In that moment, I knew her terror was real, and the man I thought I knew was a monster. "Get out," I snarled at Keith. "Get out of my house and don't ever come near us again." His expression darkened, the mask slipping. "You'll regret this, Jenna. I can make your life hell." Before I could respond, the front door opened again, and Keith's 16-year-old son Ethan walked in, his headphones on and oblivious to the confrontation. "What's going on?" he asked flatly, taking in the scene. Keith straightened, his charming smile returning like a light switch. "Nothing, son, just a little misunderstanding. Why don't you go on up to your room?" Ethan shrugged and disappeared down the hallway. I watched him go, a sinking feeling in my gut. If Keith could put on such a convincing act for his own child, what else was he capable of hiding? "This isn't over." Keith hissed, grabbing his coat. "You're going to be sorry you crossed me." With that, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him hard enough to rattle the windows. I held Haley close, my mind whirling. What had I gotten us into? And how could I protect my little girl from the storm I sensed was coming? After Keith's explosive confrontation, I knew I needed backup to protect Haley and myself. I texted my ex-husband Peter, knowing he would drop everything for our daughter's safety. Within the hour, he was at my doorstep, his face etched with concern. "Jenna? What's going on? Are you two okay?" I quickly recounted the incident with Keith as Haley clung to my side, her eyes still red from crying. Peter's expression darkened with barely contained fury. "That son of a bitch laid his hands on my little girl?" His fists clenched. "I'll kill him." "Pete, please." I put a hand on his arm, trying to calm him. As much as I understood his anger, violence wouldn't solve anything. We need to handle this carefully for Haley's sake. He took a deep breath, nodding reluctantly. Peter had always been protective of us, even after our divorce 2 years ago. I was grateful he was still in our lives. The next morning, I headed into work with Haley by my side, determined to investigate Keith's background more thoroughly. I pulled my tech-savvy colleague Tony aside. "Tony, I need your help digging into someone's digital footprint," I said in a low voice. "It's sensitive." Tony's eyes widened behind his thick glasses, but he simply nodded. "Say no more. Bring me what you've got, and I'll get to work." Back at my desk, I pulled up every scrap of information I had on Keith. Emails, phone records, social media profiles, anything that could provide a window into the truth behind his carefully crafted persona. As I compiled the files, movement at my periphery caught my eye. I glanced up to see Haley standing beside my desk, clutching her well-worn stuffed bunny. "Mommy, when is Keith coming back?" she asked in a small voice. My heart clenched at her innocent question. I got up and knelt in front of her, taking her little hands in mine. "Baby Keith, he's not a good man. You were right to be scared of him." I struggled to find the right words, my protective instincts raging. "He won't be coming back, ever. I won't let him hurt you again." Haley's lower lip trembled, but she nodded bravely. In that moment, I silently vowed to do whatever it took to keep this little girl safe from harm. Later that evening, Tony came to my apartment with a grim expression. "Jenna, you were right to be suspicious of this Keith guy." He pulled out a stack of printed documents, phone records, bank statements, even court filings from other states. I did some deep digging, and it's not pretty. Tony laid out a trail of evidence, a history of debt and unpaid loans, allegations of fraud and intimidation from ex-business partners. It painted a picture of a manipulative, vindictive man constantly chasing money through shady schemes. "There's more," Tony continued grimly. "I found 2 ex-wives who filed restraining orders claiming emotional and financial abuse. One of them, she dropped off the grid about 5 years ago." A chill shot down my spine. Had Keith's twisted games gone even further than we realized? I thought of Haley's terrified face, and my blood boiled. "We need to take this to the police," I stated, my voice hardening with resolve. "And we need an ironclad case to put this bastard away for good." Tony and I exchanged a determined look. For my little girl's sake, I would burn Keith's life to the ground and salt the earth. He had inexcusably threatened the most precious thing in my world, and he was going to pay. Over the next few days, I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for Haley's sake while Tony and I continued digging into Keith's past. The more we uncovered, the sicker I felt. Unpaid debts, allegations of fraud, and a string of scorned exes in his wake. Just how deep did this man's depravity run? One evening, there was a heavy knock at the door. I tensed, pulling Haley closer to me on the couch before getting up to answer it. To my surprise, it was Keith standing on the doorstep, an unsettling smile plastered on his face. "Hello, Jenna. Aren't you going to invite me in?" His voice was sickly sweet, but I could see the cold threat simmering in his eyes. "You're not welcome here," I stated firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want you to stay away from me and my daughter." Keith's expression hardened. "That's no way to speak to your boyfriend, Jenna, after all we've been through together?" He took a step forward, and I instinctively moved to block him from entering. "We're through, Keith. I know what kind of man you really are." I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. The lies, the manipulation, threatening a child, it's sick. A muscle twitched in his jaw, but that eerie smile didn't waver. You don't know what you're talking about, babe. Haley's just a troubled little girl looking for attention. Maybe I was a little rough with her, but she had it coming, disobeying me like that. White-hot fury lanced through me at his casual dismissal of abusing my daughter. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to lash out physically. Get off my property before I call the police, you psychopath. Keith's gaze flicked over my shoulder, catching sight of Haley peeking around the corner. His smile widened, sending a chill down my spine. You'll regret this, Jenna. You have no idea what I'm capable of. With that ominous warning, he turned and strode back to his car, leaving me shaken. I quickly shut and locked the door, pulling Haley into a fierce hug. It's okay, baby. He's not going to hurt you again, I promise. My words sounded hollow even to my own ears. If Keith was willing to threaten a child, what other depraved acts was he capable of to regain control? The next morning, I arrived at work to find Tony waiting anxiously at my desk. Jenna, you'd better see this. He pulled up a series of images, screenshots of disturbing internet searches from Keith's laptop. Things no sane person should ever be looking for, much less the man dating a single mother. My stomach turned. There's more, Tony said grimly. I accessed the cloud backup for your home computer and, well, see for yourself. With a few keystrokes, he pulled up a video feed from inside my living room, a hidden camera I never knew existed. I felt violated all over again, watching mundane family moments playing out, all secretly recorded by that monster. We have to go to the police now, I stated, feeling numb. With this evidence, they can put him away for a long time. Tony nodded in solemn agreement, but something nagged at the back of my mind. If Keith was this unhinged and desperate, what other surprises might he have in store for the people trying to take him down? I made a call to Peter, knowing we'd need all the backup we could get. There was no going back now. For Haley's safety, I had to dismantle Keith's life, piece by sickening piece. With the damning evidence Tony uncovered, we knew we had to act fast before Keith could make his next move. Peter agreed to take Haley somewhere safe while Tony and I solidified our case against that monster. Are you sure about this, Jenna? Peter asked, concern etched on his face as he held our daughter's hand. This guy seems capable of anything. I don't want you putting yourself in danger. I have to do this, Pete, I stated firmly, for Haley's sake. Keith needs to go away for a long, long time where he can't hurt anyone else. Peter nodded reluctantly. Just be careful, and call me the second you need backup, you hear? After they left, Tony and I got to work compiling every shred of proof we had. Bank records, court filings, the recordings from the hidden camera. It was a dizzying array of manipulation and deceit. Wait, there's more, Tony said, his eyes widening at his computer screen. I think I found something big. He turned the monitor to show me a series of money transfers to an offshore account I'd never seen before. And not just any money. These amounts were huge, in the millions. What the hell is this? I breathed. Where is Keith getting this kind of cash? Tony shook his head grimly. I don't know, but it can't be legal. And look at this. He scrolled through more documents, fake IDs, fraudulent passports, all under different aliases linked to those shady transactions. A sickening realization began to dawn on me. You think he's been running some kind of long con, scamming and manipulating innocent people out of their life savings? The pieces were starting to fall into place. Keith's constantly shifting business ventures, the trail of embittered exes, his quick attachment to me and Haley despite his shady past. He'd simply been looking for his next big score, and I'd let him get dangerously close to my family. We need to take this to the authorities right away, I stated, feeling numb, before he gets tipped off and tries to run. Tony nodded grimly. I'll make some calls. We're going to bury this bastard. I forced myself to stay focused over the next few hours as we marshaled our evidence and contacted the police, but my mind kept drifting to Keith's earlier threat, his cold eyes boring into me. What else was he capable of to protect his con? A sudden knock at the apartment door made me jump. I tensed, reaching slowly for the baseball bat I now kept within reach at all times. Who is it? It's me, Ethan. Keith's son? The teenage boy's muffled voice came through the door. I need to talk to you about my dad. My blood ran cold. Had Keith sent his own child here to threaten me? or worse. I gripped the bat tighter as I cracked open the door a few inches. Ethan looked past me into the apartment, his expression unreadable. I know what my dad's really been up to. The lies, the money. I want to help you take him down. I searched his face for any hint of deception, but his steely gaze seemed sincere, if haunted. Slowly, I opened the door the rest of the way. Tell me everything, I said grimly. If Ethan was truly on our side, he could be the key to finally destroying Keith's web of schemes once and for all. For Haley's sake, and every other innocent life that monster had shattered, I would make sure Keith paid the ultimate price. No mercy, no half measures. It was time to end this. With Ethan's help, the pieces finally fell into place. The kid may have been aloof, but he wasn't blind to his father's twisted games. Turns out Ethan had been collecting evidence against Keith for years, secret recordings, financial documents, you name it. I always knew there was something off about him, Ethan explained, running a hand through his shaggy hair. The constant moving, the shady business deals, the way he treated women like they were disposable. I just didn't know how far it really went until recently. Tony and I exchanged a grim look as we pored over Ethan's trove of damning evidence. It was a dizzying paper trail of fraud, emotional abuse, and ruined lives in Keith's wake. We have to take this public, I stated, feeling that familiar fire burning in my chest. Expose every last one of his sins to the world so he can never hurt anyone again. Are you sure that's wise? Ethan asked hesitantly. My dad, he's capable of anything when he's backed into a corner. If he gets tipped off, he could run, or worse. I thought of Haley's terrified face that day, the marks on her little arm from Keith's vicious grip. No, I was done playing his twisted game by his rules. Your father's reign of terror ends now, I said, my voice hardening. We're going to take him down in a big way, live for the whole world to see. No more hiding in the shadows. With grim determination, we got to work. First order of business, find out where Keith's next big public appearance would be. The slime ball never missed a chance to preen for the cameras. Sure enough, Tony discovered Keith was headlining some big corporate event in a few days' time, rubbing elbows with local bigwigs and politicians. Perfect. Next, we looped in some other key players, Peter to help keep Haley safe and secure, and Linda, one of Keith's ex-wives who had barely escaped his clutches with her life years ago. She was more than eager to help bring him down once and for all. I'll be there with everything I have on that monster, she stated grimly over the phone. It's long past time he faced real consequences. Finally, the big day arrived. I could feel the adrenaline thrumming through my veins as we got into position at the convention center where Keith's event was happening. Peter and Haley were safely tucked away, but I knew my little girl was watching over the live stream we had set up. Keith took the stage, all false bravado and that trademark smarmy grin, utterly oblivious to the reckoning that was coming. I caught Ethan's eye across the room and gave him a nod. Let the fireworks begin. With a few keystrokes, Tony hijacked the big screens flanking the stage. Suddenly, Keith's smiling face was replaced by images and footage documenting his endless trail of sins. The fraud, the abuse, the conning of innocent victims out of their life savings. I watched the color drain from his face as he realized what was happening. No, you can't do this. But it was too late. Linda was already striding towards the stage, her face contorted with years of pent-up fury. Hello, Keith, she spat venomously. Remember me? As he sputtered and backpedaled, more damning evidence filled the screens. Transcripts, audio recordings, all of it leading back to him. There was no wiggle room, no escape hatch this time. I stood tall, staring Keith down as security finally moved in to subdue his thrashing form. This is for my daughter, you sick son of a bitch, I called out, loud enough for the cameras to catch. Your reign of terror is over. Keith met my gaze then, and I saw the mask finally crack, revealing the depraved, soulless monster beneath. But I didn't flinch. I was done being afraid. As they dragged him away, I felt something loosen in my chest. A weight finally lifted after all these months of living in fear. My little girl was safe, and that twisted bastard would never be able to hurt another innocent life again. The days after our explosive expose of Keith's crimes were a whirlwind. Giving statements to the police, fielding a frenzy of media inquiries, and trying to shield Haley from the spotlight as much as possible. But through it all, I felt an immense sense of relief and vindication. That monster was finally behind bars where he could never hurt another innocent family again. Peter had been an absolute rock, keeping Haley occupied and reassuring her that the nightmare was over. I don't know what I would have done without his steady presence. "You did it, Jenna," he said simply one evening as we watched Haley playing in the living room, mercifully oblivious to the weight we had all carried. "You saved her." I managed a weary smile, suddenly feeling the full extent of the emotional trauma. "We saved her, Pete. If you hadn't been there for us." He gave my hand a comforting squeeze, and I felt a pang of regret that things hadn't worked out between us as a couple. Peter was a good man, a great father, but I had been too obsessed with my career to make our marriage a priority when it mattered most. At least now, in the aftermath of this chaos, we could be united as co-parents for Haley's well-being. A firm knock at the door pulled me from my reverie. I tensed automatically. Too many months of living on edge, I supposed. But when I pulled it open, I saw Ethan's familiar, brooding expression. "Hey!" He shuffled awkwardly on the doorstep. "I wanted to check in, see how you guys were doing." I studied Keith's son carefully. He had been through his own private hell, witnessing his father's depravity up close over the years. But in the end, Ethan had chosen the moral path, despite the risks. "We're coping," I replied honestly. "It's going to take some time to feel really safe again, you know?" Ethan nodded, looking pained. "Yeah, I get that." He drew a deep, shuddering breath. "Look, I know I can't make up for the shit my dad put you through, but if you'll let me, I want to be here, you know? For Haley and—" He trailed off, his jaw tightening. In that moment, I saw it, the longing for some semblance of family, of stability, underneath his prickly exterior. This poor kid had been starved of that his whole life, thanks to his father's toxicity. On impulse, I reached out and pulled Ethan into a fierce hug. He stiffened at first, then melted into the embrace with a quiet sigh. "You're a part of this family now, kiddo," I murmured fiercely. "We'll get through this together." There would still be plenty of hard days ahead, to be sure, wounds to mend, trust to rebuild. But in that moment, I felt a sense of hope and determination well up in my chest. We had taken down the biggest demon of all. Whatever other battles awaited, we would face them head-on, unafraid, our little family of survivors bound by our scars yet standing tall. When I finally released Ethan, I saw the glimmer of tears in his eyes, but he quickly blinked them away with a gruff nod. That was okay. We had all the time in the world now to learn how to heal and find our strength together. "Come on in," I said with a soft smile, gesturing inside. "There's someone who's going to be real happy to see her new big brother." As Haley came bounding over, her face lighting up at the sight of Ethan, I knew we were going to be all right. The nightmare was over. A new chapter was just beginning. In the weeks after Keith's dramatic downfall, life slowly began to return to normal, or at least some semblance of it. The nonstop media frenzy died down, the police wrapped up their investigation, and that sick, twisted chapter was finally closed. Of course, the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. I could see it in Haley's eyes sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking, that flicker of residual fear and uncertainty. My poor baby had her innocence shattered at such a tender age. But she was a resilient little fighter, my girl. With me, Peter, and even Ethan rallying around her, she found her sunshine again, bit by bit. Ethan, I'll admit, I had my doubts about him sticking around at first. The kid had been through his own private trauma thanks to his scumbag father. Who could blame him if he wanted to just cut and run from this ugly chapter? Instead, he stunned me by digging his heels in, determined to build a real relationship with Haley and be the supportive big brother figure she needed. They grew inseparable those first few months, playing endless rounds of make-believe and watching corny movies together. I'll never forget the night I caught them giggling secretly in the living room, Ethan's face unguardedly joyful as Haley smeared makeup all over his cheeks. Just a couple of silly kids being kids, without a care in the world. In that moment, my heart swelled with overwhelming gratitude that we had each other to lean on through the darkness. Of course, Peter was instrumental as well, my eternally patient ex-husband and co-parent. I lost count of how many times he dropped everything to rush over, whether it was fielding a night terror from Haley or just giving me a shoulder to cry on. "You don't have to thank me, Jen," he said simply one evening as we sat on the porch, enjoying the tranquility. "I'll always be here for you two. That's never going to change." I felt a pang of wistfulness, thinking of what might have been if I had prioritized my little family over my all-consuming career years ago. Peter was a good man, a good father, maybe in another life. But I pushed those thoughts aside, giving him a grateful smile. "I know, and that means everything, Pete. Really." As the summer days stretched on peacefully, I found myself slowly shedding the weight of fear and hypervigilance I'd carried for so long. The smiles came more easily, the laughter rang out more freely in our humble little home. One evening, I was putting Haley to bed when she stopped me shyly. "Mommy, can I give this to Ethan, to say thank you for being so nice?" She was clutching one of her prized possessions, a delicate wind chime made of bright seashells that Peter had brought back from a vacation years ago. Despite her young age, Haley understood the significance of such a gesture. I felt a lump form in my throat as I stroked her soft hair. "Of course you can, baby. I'm sure he'll love it." As I left her bedroom, I could see Ethan lingering in the hallway, his brooding expression softening just a touch as he watched his new little sister drift off to sleep. In that moment, I knew we had finally formed our own little family, a bit unconventional, a bit scarred, but bound by cords tougher than blood, loyal, protective, and absolutely unbreakable against any storm. I caught Ethan's eye and smiled, feeling a profound sense of peace wash over me. The nightmare was finally over. All that remained was the warm, brilliant promise of new horizons ahead. As I drifted off to sleep that night, the gentle chiming of Haley's gift to Ethan echoed faintly, like a lullaby ushering in hopeful dreams. Our future was wide open, the possibilities endless, and we would face it together, steadfast survivors all. "Megan, it's strange, isn't it? Everyone kept saying how perfect our life is, yet here I am, questioning everything about it," I said, staring blankly at the dinner table, absent-mindedly fidgeting with my wedding ring. David looked up from his phone, a hint of irritation in his eyes. "Megan, not tonight. I'm exhausted. Can we just have one peaceful dinner?" I nodded, biting my tongue. Another evening, another conversation cut short. This had become our routine, silences filled with unspoken emotions. As I cleared the table, my phone buzzed. "Mrs. Carter, there's been an accident. Your husband and his passenger are in critical condition," the voice on the other end informed. The plate slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. "What? Where? How bad is it?" My voice was frantic. "Calm down. They're being taken to Mercy General. Come quickly," the caller said before hanging up abruptly. I grabbed my coat and rushed out, my mind racing. In the emergency room, I was met by a police officer. "Mrs. Carter?" he asked, his face somber. "Your husband and his passenger were involved in a car accident. They're both in surgery." "His passenger?" I whispered, trying to process. "Who was with him?" The officer hesitated. "I believe her name is Samantha Foster." My heart sank. Samantha, my sister? What were they doing together? I spotted my mom, June, entering the waiting room. "Megan, what's happening?" "I heard about the accident. Samantha. Where is she?" "Mom, I don't know. They told me she's in surgery with David," I said, barely holding back my tears. 2 hours later, a doctor approached us. "Mrs. Carter, Mrs. Foster, your husband and daughter made it through surgery. They'll live, but their conditions are serious. It'll be a long road to recovery." Relief mixed with confusion filled me. Why was Samantha in David's car? I looked at my mom, searching for answers, but she looked as puzzled as I felt. Days turned into a blur. Between hospital visits and sleepless nights, questions gnawed at me, but I pushed them aside, focusing on David's and Samantha's recovery. Though frail, David managed to speak. "Megan, it wasn't my fault. You have to believe me." I nodded, but the doubt lingered. Why were they together that day? One evening, as I sat beside David's bed, Samantha's voice whispered from her room. "I'm sorry, Megan. I never meant for this to happen." "Sorry for what? What were you doing with David?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. Samantha averted her eyes. "Helping with the apartment. You had to work, remember?" "That doesn't explain everything, Samantha," I said, feeling my frustration bubble over. Before she could answer, the officer from earlier approached. "Mrs. Carter, we need to talk. It seems there's more to the accident. We've found evidence suggesting tampering with your car's brakes." "How is tampering?" My knees felt weak. Who would do such a thing? "We're investigating, but it might be someone close to you," he said, looking directly at me. My mind raced. Who could it be? How could this happen to us? In that moment, I realized the illusion of our perfect life had shattered, just like the plate that fell from my hand that night. The days ahead would test me in ways I never imagined. The day of our planned shopping trip with Samantha dawned earlier than expected. I was getting ready when my boss called. "Megan, I need you to come into the office. It's urgent," he said, his voice strained. I glanced at my watch. "But today is—" "I know, Megan. But it can't wait," he interrupted, sounding desperate. I sighed, feeling the pressure mount. I had promised Samantha this day. Running my fingers through my hair, I went to find David. "David, I'm so sorry, but I have to go into work. Can you help Samantha with the furniture shopping today?" I asked, feeling guilty. David's face softened despite the usual strain between us. "Sure, Megan, I can do that. Are you okay?" "Yeah, just stressed. Thanks, David. I'll be back as soon as I can." I hurried out, catching the first bus to the office. The day was a blur of meetings and emergencies, all while my mind kept drifting to Samantha and David. Late in the afternoon, my phone rang. An unknown number flashed on the screen. I answered, my heart sinking immediately. "Mrs. Carter, I regret to inform you, I heard nothing else." My entire world flipped upside down. As the unknown caller continued speaking, I held on to the edge of my desk, feeling the room spin. I rushed out of the office and sped to the hospital, my thoughts racing almost as fast. The echoes of the previous night's revelations kept haunting me. In the waiting room, I saw the same police officer who had become a grim fixture in our lives. His presence hinted at how dire the situation was. "Officer, what's happening? Is it my husband and sister again?" I asked, breathless. "Yes, Mrs. Carter. Their conditions are still critical, but we have some suspicions regarding this incident too," his tone grave. "What do you mean?" My voice shook. "We think someone tampered with their car," he said, studying my reaction. "This couldn't be happening." "Sabotage again?" I glanced to see my mom, June, rushing in. "Megan, what's going on?" "Samantha and David—" "Mom, it's bad. The police think someone tampered with their car," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother gasped, clutching my arm. Who would do such a thing? "That's what we need to find out," the officer said. "We need to investigate, but it's looking like someone close to you is involved." As we waited, my emotions whirled. David was supposed to help Samantha, but now they both lay fighting for their lives. In the sterile halls of the hospital, the doctor emerged again. "Mrs. Carter, Mrs. Foster, they'll make it through surgery, but their conditions remain serious. It'll be a hard recovery." Everything felt like a nightmare come to life. As I struggled to process this, a chilling thought crossed my mind. Who would do this, and why target David and Samantha? David was conscious again later, still weak but coherent. "Megan," he croaked, reaching out for my hand. "It wasn't my fault." I sat by his bed, trying to piece everything together. The same questions replayed. Why were they in the car together? Why did this keep happening? Then, like a shadow cutting through the dim light, another question loomed. Was someone deliberately trying to tear us apart? The pieces didn't fit, and the answers kept slipping through my fingers. The days ahead would reveal more than just the extent of their injuries. They would expose the darkest corners of our lives, corners I wasn't ready to face. I gripped the steering wheel, driving to the hospital with a white-knuckled intensity. The news of the accident played on repeat in my mind. David and Samantha. Why did this keep happening? The hospital loomed large as I pulled into the parking lot. I stumbled through the entrance, my breaths coming in shallow gasps. The familiar sterile smell hit me like a wave. I rushed to the receptionist. "David Carter and Samantha Foster, please. Where are they?" "They're on the 3rd floor, ICU," she responded, eyes filled with empathy. Racing to the elevator, I barely noticed the others around me. Every second felt like an eternity. As the doors opened on the 3rd floor, I spotted the police officer from earlier, waiting with a grim expression. "Mrs. Carter, let's talk," he said, leading me to a small, quiet room. "What happened?" I demanded, my voice cracking. Preliminary evidence suggests someone tampered with the brakes on your car, he began. We're investigating, but we need to address some initial suspicions. I looked at him in disbelief. Who could have done this? We don't know yet, but it might be someone very close to you, he said, holding my gaze. The room spun as I tried to comprehend his words. Someone close to me? Who would do such a thing? Just then the doctor entered. Mrs. Carter, you and your mother can see them now, but they're still very weak. Please, just a few minutes. We followed him silently to the ICU. I walked in, feeling like a ghost. David lay motionless, tubes and machines everywhere. His eyes fluttered open as I approached. Megan, he whispered, his voice strained. I'm sorry. David, don't try to talk, I said, a lump in my throat. We'll figure this out. I moved to Samantha's side, of her face pale and battered. She slowly opened her eyes, looking at me with a flicker of guilt. I'm so sorry, Megan. I never wanted this, she mumbled, tears welling up. Why, Sam? Why were you with David? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Before she could reply, the officer stepped in. Mrs. Carter, we have more questions for you. We suspect there might be something deeper going on. He led me out of the room as my mind raced with a flurry of questions. What do you mean by something deeper? I asked, trying to keep up. We're looking at this from all angles. Right now, our focus is on who had access to your car and why they'd target both David and Samantha, he explained, his tone serious. I nodded, absorbing the weight of his words. Someone had it out for my family, and as the picture started to come into focus, I realized I needed to be strong to face whatever truths came our way. Back in the waiting area, June wrapped her arms around me. Megan, we'll get through this. We have to. Her words offered a small glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. As I sat there, I knew the days ahead would be filled with difficult revelations and harder choices, but one thing was clear. I wouldn't stop until I uncovered the truth. And whoever was behind this, they'd pay for every bit of pain they caused. The hospital became my second home in the weeks that followed. David and Samantha were awake but far from okay. Their recoveries were slow, and with each day, our family splintered further. David's frustration grew, seeping into every interaction. One evening, as I entered his room, I found him seething. Megan, this is unbearable, he snapped. Why can't you do anything right? Get the nurses, now. I flinched at his harsh tone, but nodded and stepped out. While I sought the nurses, a knot tightened in my stomach. Returning with a nurse, David glared at me. It took you long enough, he muttered. Embarrassed and hurt, I took a step back, letting the nurse do her job. Walking out, I heard Samantha calling for me. I headed into her room, already bracing for the stress. Megan, can you help me with this bed adjustment? Why is everything so hard to reach? She complained, sounding almost whiny. I adjusted the bed, trying to keep a steady hand. There you go, better? Yeah, thanks. Just, don't you get tired of this? She asked, her voice softer, almost reflective. I sighed, wiping a hand across my forehead. It's exhausting, Sam, but it's what we have to do. She looked away, silent, and for a moment I thought through the shadows of her guilt. But I couldn't afford to delve into their thoughts. Actions mattered now. Moments later, June joined me in the hallway. She looked worn out, dark circles under her eyes. Megan, dear, this is too much. You need rest. I can't, Mom. They need me, I argued, though my body ached with fatigue. As I turned to leave, I caught a snippet of conversation that chilled me. Damn it, Samantha, how could you trust anyone else to handle this mess? David's voice accused from his room. I thought we'd be smart enough to avoid this, Samantha retorted, her voice dripping with exasperation. Their words hung in the air as I stepped back, unnoticed. Everywhere I turned, betrayal seemed to lurk. Later that evening, the officer returned with an update. Mrs. Carter, we confirmed that your car's brakes were tampered with. It appears meticulous. A lump formed in my throat. Do you have any leads? We're following up on some information, but nothing concrete yet. It seems very personal, he added. I nodded, feeling the weight of new suspicion. Each discovery pushed me closer to an edge I couldn't ignore. Back in Samantha's room, I watched as she rested fitfully. Her condition was serious, and her needs were endless. But as I cared for her, the tension between us lingered just below the surface. David, on the other hand, became increasingly venomous. Megan, this is your fault, isn't it? He'd accuse, his bitterness slicing through the thin air of the hospital room. You always wanted something more. Well, look where that got us. I clenched my jaw, swallowing down my retorts. Silence became my shield. As days dragged on, June was caught between us, her own exhaustion growing. The strain in David and Samantha's behavior took a toll on her, and it showed. In the quiet moments, when the hospital felt heavy with unspoken words, I knew I had to stay resilient. This darkness, whatever it held, would not swallow me whole. The truth, however twisted, was my next goal, and in that journey, my quiet determination was my solitary companion. June sat next to me in the waiting room, her face pale from the persistent strain. "Mom, you should go home. Rest," I said, squeezing her hand. She shook her head. "No, Megan, I need to be here for both of you." A police officer approached, his expression serious. "Mrs. Carter, can we speak privately?" I nodded and followed him to a small room. The door closed behind us, magnifying the silence. "We've found more evidence," he began, eyes locking onto mine. "The brake tampering points to someone close to you. Further investigation led us to Maxine Lewis. Do you know her?" My heart skipped a beat. "Maxine? No, I don't think so." "She has a strong vendetta against David," he explained. "It seems they have a history." I had never heard of her before, but my gut twisted. "What kind of history?" "We're still piecing it together, but she's someone you should be aware of," he said, his tone firm. "We'll keep you updated." Back in David's room, I tried to mask my turmoil. He lay there, eyes closed, looking fragile. When his eyes opened, the familiar coldness was there. "David, do you know a Maxine Lewis?" I asked, my voice steady. He blinked, showing confusion for the first time. "Maxine? Why are you asking about her?" "She's connected to the brake tampering," I said, watching his reaction closely. David's face darkened. "Don't believe everything they say. Megan, she's just a liar trying to ruin me." A chilling realization set in. His words sounded defensive rather than innocent. I took a step back, needing to breathe. Later, as I moved through the hospital, I saw Samantha's demands growing. "Mom, I need this. I need that," she whined, pushing June to exhaustion. With June physically drained and emotionally wrecked, the hospital turned into a battleground. I saw the toll it took on her, breaking my heart. One evening, as I huddled in the courtyard for a moment of solitude, I heard hushed voices. Peeking through the window, I saw David on the phone. "You need to fix this, Samantha. We can't let Megan find out." David's voice was stern. Samantha replied, her voice shaky, "I thought we covered all our tracks. How did they find Maxine?" David glanced around, then hissed, "She's relentless. We need to deal with her before she exposes everything." Their words sent a shiver down my spine. My suspicions solidified into a horrifying reality. They were in on something deep, something dark. Determined to get the truth, I confronted Samantha the next morning. "Sam, what's going on between you and David?" I demanded. Her eyes widened, fear and guilt mingling. "Megan, you don't understand." "Help me understand then," I said, my voice cracking but forceful. Before she could respond, the same officer reappeared. "Mrs. Carter, we've confirmed some findings. Maxine Lewis has a significant grievance with your husband related to financial deceit and personal betrayal." I stood there, my world crumbling as the pieces came together. David and Samantha had lies stretching far and wide, and now Maxine's quest for revenge had entwined us all. Leaving the hospital that night, my resolve hardened. The darkness needed to come to light. But first, I'd have to face both David and Samantha, expose their deceit, and deliver justice for everyone hurt along the way. The truth was no longer hiding, it was marching right towards us. With every step, I knew I was getting closer to unraveling the entire conspiracy, and I swore to myself nobody would walk away unscathed once the truth surfaced. The days passed in a blur, each one blending into the next. My focus sharpened. I had to confront David and Samantha. The lies needed to end. One morning, I stood outside David's hospital room, summoning the courage to go in. When I finally walked in, his eyes flicked up from his phone. "Megan, what now?" he asked, annoyance clear in his voice. "I know about Maxine. I know about the tampered brakes. You need to tell me everything," I demanded, crossing my arms. David's expression shifted, a sneer curling his lips. "You think you know everything, huh? You know nothing, Megan." "No more lies, David. Why was Samantha with you?" I pressed, feeling my anger surge. He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Samantha and I are closer than you think. We've been together behind your back for months." No, I felt the ground give way beneath me. "What?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. David's eyes gleamed with malice. Yeah, Megan. While you were busy playing the doting wife, Samantha and I were planning a future. One that didn't involve you. My heart pounded in my chest. You used me? Of course, David said, his voice dripping with contempt. We needed your money, your connections. It was all a game. With shaking hands, I left his room and stumbled into Samantha's. She looked up, guilt and fear etched into her face. Megan, she started, but I cut her off. Spare me the excuses, Sam. I know. David told me everything. She broke down, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. A mistake? I shouted, rage boiling over. You betrayed me, sabotaged my life. Samantha sobbed, unable to meet my eyes. It wasn't supposed to go this far. We just wanted to push you out of the way, take control. I clenched my fists, shaking with anger. You wanted to destroy me. Why? Because you were jealous? Because you and David wanted my life? Suddenly a nurse walked in, startled by the intensity in the room. Is everything okay here? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. No, it's not, but it will be. I left the room, resolved to take action. The first step was meeting with the officer. Mrs. Carter, we have more to show you, he said, leading me to a small office. The screen flickered to life, showing surveillance footage from my car. There were David and Samantha, laughing, touching. The evidence was undeniable. Tears filled my eyes as I watched my trust shatter. Megan, the officer's voice was gentle, we can pursue charges. Their manipulation of your finances, the attempted murder, it's all documented. Stunned, I nodded. Do what you need to do. Later, at home, I found a message from Maxine. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. David destroyed my life. I needed him to pay. I never meant for you to be hurt, Megan. Maxine's pain mirrored my own. A twisted kinship formed through betrayal. Her story, one of deceit and revenge, echoed in mine. The next day, I returned to the hospital with divorce papers. David's eyes widened when he saw them. Megan, wait. We can work this out, he pleaded, a hint of desperation in his voice. It's over, David, I said coldly, dropping the papers on his bed. You took everything from me. Now you'll pay. Walking away, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. Samantha's screams echoed behind me, but I didn't turn back. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was stronger now. The truth, bitter and painful, had set me free. And with that freedom came the resolve to rebuild, to rise from the ashes of betrayal. David tried to stop me as I walked out of his hospital room, but I did not turn back. His pleas faded as I moved down the corridor, my steps growing firmer with each stride. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. The next few days were a whirlwind. News of David's and Samantha's affair spread like wildfire. Friends, colleagues, and even family members reached out, shocked and judgmental. I let them talk, their words bouncing off my new armor. One afternoon, I walked into a cafe for a meeting with the police officer. The place was buzzing, but I felt a strange calm wash over me. Mrs. Carter, the officer greeted with a nod. We have finalized the charges against David and Samantha. They'll be facing a lengthy legal battle. Good, I replied, my voice steady. I want justice, not just for me, but for everyone they hurt. He slid a document across the table. This outlines their financial manipulations and the evidence we've gathered. Their social standing is already in ruins. I scanned the paper, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. It was all there in black and white, every deceitful act laid bare. Leaving the cafe, I bumped into Maxine. Her face was a mask of regret. Megan, she began softly, I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted David to feel the pain he caused me. I studied her, seeing the echoes of my own pain. Maxine, you took extreme measures, but I understand why, I said, surprising myself with the empathy in my voice. We both suffered because of him. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. I'm sorry for everything. With a heavy heart, I walked away, my mind set on the next step. My journey was far from over. The legal proceedings against David and Samantha progressed quickly. Each court appearance was another blow to their fabricated lives. Their faces, once haughty and assured, now looked haunted. One morning, I stood outside the courthouse, clutching my mother's hand. June looked weary but resolute. Megan, I'm so proud of you. You've been so strong. I smiled faintly. I had to be for both of us. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations. When David and Samantha entered, all eyes turned to them. They looked diminished, mere shadows of their former selves. David's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. The judge's gaze was stern. The evidence is overwhelming. I hope you're prepared for the consequences of your actions. Samantha's lawyer followed suit, but her plea sounded even more hollow. Their downfall was inevitable and thoroughly deserved. After the hearings, I approached David. For the last time, I stared into the eyes of the man I had once loved. This is the end, David. You've lost everything. His eyes flared with anger. You think you've won, Megan? You're as foolish as ever. I shook my head, feeling nothing but pity. No, David, I'm no longer your victim. Goodbye. Later, I visited Samantha in her care facility. She was a shell of her former self, her demanding nature now subdued by the cold reality of her situation. Why, Samantha? I asked. Tears streamed down her face. I was jealous, insecure. David filled my head with lies. I betrayed you, and now I'm paying for it. I sighed deeply, the finality of her words sinking in. You've caused so much pain, Sam, but I hope you find peace someday. Stepping outside, I felt a strange sense of release. The storm had passed, leaving me to pick up the pieces. I was scarred, but stronger. The world outside the courthouse was bright, filled with possibilities. As I walked away, I knew the journey ahead would be about healing and rediscovering myself, free from the shadows of betrayal. The future was mine to shape, and with each step, I embraced the promise of a new beginning. 2 years later, the hospital memories felt like a distant nightmare. Life had moved forward, carrying me with it. I stood in my office, stacks of paperwork before me, yet this time everything felt different. Lighter. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. Hey, Megan, ready for lunch? Henry's voice brought a smile to my face. Henry Thompson had walked into my life unexpectedly. We met at a professional event, his kind eyes and genuine smile a stark contrast to everything I had known before. Yeah, let's go, I replied, grabbing my coat. As we walked to the cafe, Henry's hand gently brushed mine, a simple yet comforting gesture. During lunch, he looked at me with a mixture of pride and affection. You've come so far, Megan. I'm amazed at your strength and grace. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread inside. I couldn't have done it without your support, Henry. Our relationship was built on trust and mutual respect, the very things I thought I'd never find again. It reflected my personal growth and newfound independence. Life had its challenges, but I faced them head-on, with Henry by my side. Returning to my apartment that evening, I marveled at how much had changed. The walls now displayed art that I loved, and the spaces reflected my tastes, my choices. June was there, having tea on the balcony. Her presence was a constant reminder of enduring love. Hey, Mom, I greeted, sitting beside her. She smiled, her eyes filled with contentment. Megan, I've watched you rebuild your life from the ground up. I couldn't be prouder. Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. My voice was soft, filled with genuine emotion. We chatted about everything and nothing, enjoying the silence that spoke volumes. The turbulence of the past had given way to stillness and healing. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, a sense of peace enveloped me. The scars from the betrayal remained, but they no longer defined me. They were a testament to my resilience, a reminder of the strength I had discovered within myself. The next morning, Henry and I attended a community event. Children laughed, vendors sold crafts, and the air was filled with joy. We wandered through the stalls, soaking in the vibrant atmosphere. Megan, a voice called out. I turned to see an old friend. We exchanged pleasantries, and as the conversation flowed, I realized how far I had come. The community that once knew me through my shattered marriage now saw a woman reborn, thriving amidst newfound freedom. As the sun began to set, Henry and I sat on a park bench, watching the world go by. He turned to me, his expression serious but tender. Megan, I know we've both been through a lot, but I want to build our future together. Will you? Before he could finish, I placed a hand on his. Yes, Henry, I want that too. His smile was radiant, and in that moment, I saw the future, bright and filled with possibility. The journey from betrayal to healing had been long, but it shaped me into someone stronger, wiser. The shadows of the past didn't disappear, but they faded, replaced by the light of new beginnings. Embracing Henry's hand, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life had offered me a second chance, and this time I wasn't looking back. The future, with all its promises, awaited, and I was ready to step into it, with hope and newfound courage leading the way. I stared at my phone, dumbfounded by Kevin's invitation. It had been years since we last spoke, our lives diverging after college. While his carefree spirit beckoned adventure, my world revolved around spreadsheets and the monotonous rhythm of corporate life. I don't know, Kev, I said hesitantly. A camping trip seems exactly what you need, he interrupted. When was the last time you stepped out of that office, Harper? His words struck a chord. Between caring for my ailing father and the endless grind at work, I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something for myself. You've got a point, I conceded, but I can't just drop everything. Yes, you can, he insisted. One weekend, Harper. That's all I'm asking. We'll hike, tell stories by the fire, and you can rediscover that spark you've been missing. My practical side battled with the yearning for adventure. With a deep breath, I made a decision that would alter the course of my life forever. All right, I'm in. The following Saturday, I found myself at a coffee shop surrounded by an eclectic group of Kevin's friends. As I sipped my latte, trying to appear nonchalant, Kevin approached with a tall, rugged-looking man in tow. Harper, this is Miles, Kevin announced. Our resident outdoorsman and guide for the weekend. Miles extended a calloused hand, his eyes twinkling with mischief. Pleasure to meet you. Kevin tells me you're an accountant? I nodded, suddenly self-conscious about my corporate attire amidst their casual hiking gear. Well, we'll have to toughen you up, Miles said with a wink. The great outdoors doesn't care about numbers. His teasing put me at ease, and I found myself laughing alongside the others. As we set off for the trailhead, I couldn't shake the feeling that this trip would be more than just a weekend escape. The hike proved more challenging than I anticipated, but Miles stayed by my side, offering encouragement and tips. With each step, the weight of my responsibilities seemed to lighten. First time hiking, Harper? He asked, noticing my labored breaths. Is it that obvious? I replied, trying to mask my struggle. Miles chuckled. Don't worry, we all started somewhere. Just take it at your own pace. As the day progressed, I found myself opening up to Miles about my life, the endless hours at the office, caring for my father, and the constant feeling of being trapped. He listened intently, understanding the burdens I carried. That night, huddled around the campfire, I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced in years. Miles's stories of his adventures captivated me, painting vivid pictures of landscapes I'd only dreamed of seeing. Why don't you ever travel, Harper? He asked, his gaze piercing through the flickering flames. I shrugged, unsure of how to articulate the weight of my responsibilities. Too much to leave behind, I guess. Miles nodded, understanding without judgment. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of a different life, one filled with freedom and possibility. The next morning, I awoke in the tent, my body aching but my spirit renewed. As I emerged, Miles was already brewing coffee over the campfire. Morning, Harper, he greeted with a warm smile. Ready for another adventure? I took a deep breath, savoring the crisp mountain air. As ready as I'll ever be. And for the first time in years, I truly meant it. The morning after our camping trip, I found myself back at the coffee shop, surrounded by Kevin's friends. The air buzzed with excitement as everyone recounted their favorite moments from the weekend. Did you see the look on Harper's face when she reached the summit? Kevin teased, nudging me playfully. I thought she was going to keel over. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't help grinning. Hey, cut me some slack. It was my first real hike. You did great, Harper, Miles chimed in, his voice sending a flutter through my chest. Not everyone takes to the outdoors like a natural. Our eyes met, and for a moment it felt like we were the only two people in the room. Kevin cleared his throat, snapping us back to reality. So who's up for another adventure next month? He asked, rubbing his hands together mischievously. The group erupted in a chorus of cheers and laughter, but I stayed silent, suddenly aware of the weight of my responsibilities waiting for me at home. Miles must have noticed my hesitation. You know, Harper, you don't have to decide right away, he said gently. Just think about it. I nodded, grateful for his understanding. As the group dispersed, Miles lingered behind. I meant what I said out there, he murmured. You were incredible this weekend. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Before I could respond, he pulled me into a warm embrace, his rugged scent enveloping me. My heart raced as we parted, his touch igniting a spark I thought had long extinguished. See you around, Harper. he said with a wink, disappearing into the bustling city streets. Over the next few months, our camping trips became a regular escape from the monotony of daily life. With each adventure, Miles and I grew closer, our bond strengthened by the shared challenges and triumphs of the great outdoors. One evening, as we sat around the crackling campfire, Miles turned to me with a contemplative expression. "Have you ever thought about doing something different with your life?" he asked, his eyes reflecting the dancing flames. I shrugged, unsure of how to respond. "Like what?" "I don't know," he mused. "Traveling, maybe? Seeing the world beyond those spreadsheets and cubicles?" His words struck a chord within me, awakening a yearning I'd long suppressed. Before I could overthink it, the words tumbled out. "I'd love that, Miles, but with my dad's health and my job..." I trailed off, the weight of my responsibilities crashing down once again. Miles reached out, taking my hand in his calloused grip. "Harper, you can't live your life for other people. You deserve to be happy too." His words resonated deeply, and in that moment, I knew something had to change. I couldn't continue sacrificing my dreams for the sake of others' expectations. "You're right," I said, my voice trembling with a newfound determination. "I can't keep living like this." Miles smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "That's my girl." From that night on, a shift occurred within me. I started making plans, exploring options, and dreaming of a life beyond the confines of my routine. And through it all, Miles remained by my side, unwavering in his support and belief in me. Little did I know the path I was embarking on would lead me down a twisted trail of deception and heartbreak, testing the very limits of my resilience and resolve. The crisp mountain air filled my lungs as our group embarked on another hiking adventure. Miles led the way, his confident strides guiding us deeper into the wilderness. "All right, everyone, we'll take the scenic route today," he announced, adjusting his backpack. "It's a bit more challenging, but the views are worth it." I exchanged a nervous glance with Kevin, who just shrugged and grinned. "You heard the man, let's do this." As we trekked along the winding trail, I couldn't help but steal glances at Miles. The way he navigated the terrain with such ease and grace was captivating. "Need a hand?" he asked, slowing his pace to fall in step beside me. I shook my head, determined to prove myself. "I've got this." Miles chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Stubborn as always. I like that about you, Harper." His words sent a flutter through my chest, and I had to force myself to keep my focus on the trail ahead. After a grueling ascent, we finally reached a breathtaking overlook. Miles gestured for me to join him at the edge, and I gasped at the panoramic view that stretched out before us. "Incredible, isn't it?" he murmured, his voice low and intimate. I nodded, words failing me in the face of such natural beauty. In that moment, it felt like Miles and I were the only two people in the world. As the others settled down for a well-deserved break, Miles turned to me with a mischievous grin. "Up for a little detour?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with adventure. Before I could respond, he grabbed my hand and led me down a narrow path, veering off the main trail. My heart raced with a mixture of excitement and apprehension, but I trusted Miles implicitly. After a short hike, we emerged into a secluded clearing, a pristine waterfall cascading into a crystal-clear pool. "Miles, this is..." I trailed off, unable to find the words to describe the breathtaking scene before us. He simply smiled, that familiar twinkle in his eye. "I thought you might like it." Without hesitation, Miles began stripping off his hiking gear, and I averted my gaze, suddenly flustered. "What are you doing?" I asked, my cheeks flushing. "Going for a swim," he replied nonchalantly. "Care to join me?" Before I could protest, he dove gracefully into the pool, resurfacing with a playful splash. I couldn't help but laugh at his carefree spirit. "Come on, Harper," he called out. "Live a little." Biting my lip, I weighed my options. Part of me wanted to cling to the safety of my comfort zone, but a larger part yearned for the freedom and spontaneity that Miles embodied. With a deep breath, I stripped down to my undergarments and slipped into the cool, refreshing water. Miles beamed, pulling me into an embrace that sent shivers down my spine. "That's my girl," he murmured, his lips dangerously close to mine. In that moment, surrounded by nature's untamed beauty, I felt more alive than I had in years. Miles had awoken a part of me I thought had long been extinguished, a thirst for adventure, for living life to the fullest. As we floated together in the tranquil pool, our bodies intertwined, I knew that my life would never be the same again. Miles had shown me a world beyond the confines of my routine, and I was determined to embrace it, no matter the cost. Little did I know, the path I had chosen would lead me down a twisted trail of deception and heartbreak, testing the very limits of my resilience and resolve. As the sun dipped below the horizon, our group gathered around the crackling campfire, the dancing flames casting flickering shadows across our faces. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and camaraderie. "All right, who's got a good story to share?" Kevin asked, rubbing his hands together in anticipation. A chorus of laughter and protests erupted, but Miles remained silent, his gaze fixed on the flames. I studied his profile, mesmerized by the way the firelight played across his rugged features. "What about you, Harper?" he said suddenly, turning to me with a warm smile. "I'm sure you've got some tales from the corporate world." I shrugged self-consciously. "I don't know, Miles. My life isn't exactly the stuff of adventure novels." He leaned closer, his eyes holding a hint of mischief. "Come on, there has to be something interesting in all those spreadsheets." Faced with his playful prodding, I found myself recounting a particularly harrowing tax season, complete with all-nighters and office drama. To my surprise, the group was enraptured, hanging on my every word. As the laughter died down, Miles caught my eye, a silent understanding passing between us. In that moment, I realized how much I'd been missing out on, the simple pleasures of good company and shared experiences. "Your turn, Miles," I challenged, emboldened by the warmth of the fire and the camaraderie surrounding us. He grinned, that familiar twinkle in his eye. "All right, but brace yourselves. This one's a doozy." Miles launched into a captivating tale of his solo trek through the Himalayas, his words painting vivid pictures of treacherous mountain passes and breathtaking vistas. As he spoke, I found myself leaning in, hanging on his every word, desperate to soak up every detail of his adventures. When he finished, the group erupted in a chorus of appreciative cheers and applause. But Miles's gaze was fixed on me, his eyes shining with a depth of emotion that sent my heart racing. "Why don't you ever travel, Harper?" he asked, his voice low and intimate. I hesitated, suddenly aware of the weight of my responsibilities. Responsibilities, I guess. Too much to leave behind. Miles nodded, his expression understanding. "I get it, but you can't let life pass you by." His words struck a chord within me, awakening a yearning I'd long suppressed. Before I could respond, Kevin chimed in, oblivious to the moment he'd interrupted. "All right, enough with the heavy stuff," he said, clapping his hands together. "Who's up for some ghost stories?" The group erupted in a chorus of laughter and excited chatter, but Miles and I remained locked in our own private moment, a silent understanding passing between us. As the night wore on, I found myself gravitating closer to Miles, drawn in by his warmth and charisma. We shared stories and laughs, our connection deepening with every passing moment. When the fire finally dwindled to embers, Miles stood, offering me his hand. "Take a walk with me?" Without hesitation, I accepted, allowing him to lead me away from the camp and into the embrace of the starry night. We strolled in comfortable silence, our shoulders brushing with every step. Finally, Miles stopped, turning to face me. "Harper, His voice trailed off, but his eyes spoke volumes, conveying a depth of emotion that left me breathless. Before I could respond, he pulled me into a searing kiss, his lips claiming mine with a fierce intensity. In that moment, all my doubts and fears melted away, replaced by a burning desire that consumed me from the inside out. When we finally broke apart, gasping for air, Miles rested his forehead against mine. "You're incredible, Harper," he murmured, his words sending shivers down my spine. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." As we made our way back to camp, our fingers intertwined, I knew that my life had been forever changed. Miles had awakened a fire within me, a thirst for adventure and passion that I could no longer ignore. Little did I know, the path I had chosen would lead me down a twisted trail of deception and heartbreak, testing the very limits of my resilience and resolve. I awoke to the gentle rustle of the tent fabric, the crisp morning air seeping in. As I blinked away the remnants of sleep, the memories of the previous night came flooding back. Miles's kiss, the intensity of his embrace, the way he had ignited a fire within me. Carefully I unzipped the tent flap, squinting against the bright morning sun. Miles was already up, tending to the campfire, his movements fluid and confident. He glanced up as I emerged, a warm smile spreading across his rugged features. "Morning, sleepyhead," he greeted, his voice rich and inviting. "Coffee's almost ready." I nodded, still feeling a bit dazed from the events of the night before. As I approached the fire, Miles handed me a steaming mug, his fingers brushing against mine in a simple yet electrifying touch. "Thanks," I murmured, taking a tentative sip and savoring the rich, earthy flavor. Miles studied me for a moment, his eyes sparkling with amusement. "You look like you could use some more rest. Rough night?" A flush crept up my cheeks as I recalled the passionate embrace we had shared under the stars. "You could say that." He chuckled, that familiar twinkle in his eye sending butterflies fluttering through my stomach. "Well, I hope you're ready for another adventure today. I've got something special planned." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh? And what might that be?" Miles simply grinned, that mischievous glint in his eye. "It's a surprise, but trust me, you're going to love it." As we set off on the day's hike, I couldn't help but steal glances at Miles, my mind replaying the events of the previous night. The way he had held me, kissed me, it was as if he had awoken a part of me that had been dormant for far too long. Miles seemed to sense my distraction, reaching out to give my hand a gentle squeeze. "You okay over there?" I nodded, offering him a reassuring smile. "Yeah, just taking it all in." He grinned, that infectious enthusiasm lighting up his face. "Well, get ready, because we're almost there." As we rounded a bend in the trail, a breathtaking sight came into view. A secluded waterfall cascading into a crystal-clear pool, surrounded by lush foliage and towering peaks. "Miles, this is—" I trailed off, at a loss for words. He simply smiled, that familiar twinkle in his eye. "I knew you'd like it." Without hesitation, he began stripping off his hiking gear, and I couldn't help but admire the toned lines of his body. When he caught me staring, he winked playfully. "Care to join me for a dip?" I bit my lip, suddenly self-conscious. But the allure of the cool, inviting water, and the prospect of being close to Miles again, was too strong to resist. Slowly, I peeled off my own layers, trying to ignore the way Miles's gaze raked over my exposed skin. When we were both down to our undergarments, he extended his hand, his eyes burning with an intensity that set my heart racing. "Trust me," he murmured, his voice low and seductive. I placed my hand in his, allowing him to lead me into the refreshing embrace of the pool. As the water enveloped us, Miles pulled me close, his muscular arms wrapping around me in a possessive embrace. "You're incredible, Harper," he whispered, his lips brushing against my ear. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." In that moment, surrounded by nature's untamed beauty and cradled in Miles's strong embrace, I felt more alive than I ever had before. He had awakened a fire within me, a thirst for adventure and passion that I could no longer ignore. As our bodies intertwined beneath the cascading waterfall, I surrendered myself to the moment, allowing the rush of desire to consume me. Miles claimed my lips in a searing kiss, his touch igniting a blaze of emotions that threatened to consume us both. Little did I know that the path I had chosen would lead me down a twisted trail of deception and heartbreak, testing the very limits of my resilience and resolve. But in that moment, none of that mattered. Only the intensity of our connection, the promise of a future filled with passion and adventure. The waterfall's gentle roar filled my ears as I clung to Miles, our bodies intertwined beneath the cascading waters. His strong arms encircled me, our kiss deepening with a fierce intensity that left me breathless. When we finally broke apart, gasping for air, Miles rested his forehead against mine, his eyes shining with a depth of emotion that sent shivers down my spine. "Harper," he murmured, his voice thick with desire. "I've never felt this way about anyone before." I traced the sharp line of his jaw, marveling at the way the water droplets clung to his tanned skin. "Neither have I." He captured my hand in his, pressing a tender kiss to my palm. "Stay with me, Harper. Let's make this adventure last forever." My heart raced at the implications of his words, the promise of a future filled with passion and freedom. Before I could respond, he silenced me with another searing kiss, his touch igniting a fire within me that threatened to consume us both. From that moment on, our bond only deepened, forged in the crucible of our shared experiences and the intensity of our connection. Miles showed me a world beyond the confines of my routine, a life filled with adventure and possibility. A year later, as we stood hand in hand beneath the same waterfall where our love had blossomed, Miles dropped to one knee, his eyes shining with determination. "Harper," he began, his voice steady despite the tremor of emotion, "you've shown me what it means to truly live, to embrace every moment and cherish the beauty in this world. You've awakened a fire within me that I never knew existed." He reached into his pocket, producing a simple yet elegant ring. "Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Of embarking on the greatest adventure of all, a life together?" Tears of joy streamed down my cheeks as I nodded, rendered speechless by the depth of his love and devotion. Miles slipped the ring onto my finger, sealing our promise with a kiss that set my soul ablaze. Our wedding was a simple yet beautiful affair, a celebration of our love and the unbreakable bond we had forged. As we exchanged vows beneath the open sky, surrounded by the majestic peaks that had witnessed the blossoming of our romance, I knew that I had found my forever. The years that followed were filled with adventure and passion, our love only growing stronger with each challenge we faced together. We traveled the world, explored hidden corners of the globe, and cherished every moment of our shared journey. But eventually the responsibilities of life caught up with us. When my father's health began to decline, Miles didn't hesitate to support my decision to move him into our home and become his caretaker. "Your family is my family, Harper," he assured me, his eyes shining with unwavering devotion. "We'll get through this together." Little did I know that those words would be put to the ultimate test, as the path we had chosen led us down a twisted trail of deception and heartbreak, testing the very limits of our resilience and resolve. 4 years after our fairy tale wedding, the harsh realities of life began to catch up with us. My father's health had taken a turn for the worse, and the decision to move him into our home weighed heavily on both of us. "Are you sure about this, Harper?" Miles asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "It's a huge responsibility." I nodded, my resolve unwavering. "He's my dad, Miles. I have to do this." Miles pulled me into a warm embrace, his strong arms offering reassurance. "You know, I'll be here every step of the way, right? We're in this together." His words brought me comfort, but deep down, I knew the strain this would put on our relationship. Caring for my ailing father would consume much of my time and energy, leaving little room for the adventurous lifestyle we had once enjoyed. True to his word, Miles stepped up to the challenge, helping with my father's care and offering unwavering support. But as the months wore on, the financial burden began to take its toll. "I've been crunching the numbers," I said one evening, my voice laced with worry. "Between Dad's medical expenses and the loss of my income, we're stretching thin." Miles reached across the table, taking my hand in his calloused grip. "We'll figure it out, Harper. Money isn't everything." But the strain was evident in his eyes, a flicker of doubt that he tried to conceal. I knew he was putting on a brave face for my sake, but the cracks were beginning to show. As my father's condition deteriorated, I made the difficult decision to quit my job, devoting myself entirely to his care. Miles supported my choice, but the financial strain only intensified. "I've been picking up extra work," he admitted one night, his voice tinged with exhaustion, "doing some freelance gigs to make ends meet." I studied his weary expression, guilt gnawing at my conscience. "Miles, you shouldn't have to shoulder this burden alone." He forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's temporary, Harper. We'll get through this, I promise." But as the weeks turned into months, Miles grew increasingly distant, his once vibrant spirit dimming under the weight of our circumstances. I tried to broach the subject, but he would brush me off, insisting everything was fine. It wasn't until I stumbled upon a stack of unpaid bills and notices from creditors that the truth began to unravel. Miles had been hiding a secret from me, a gambling addiction that had spiraled out of control, leaving us drowning in debt. When I finally confronted him, the floodgates opened, and the depth of his deceit came crashing down upon us. "I'm sorry, Harper," he choked out, his eyes brimming with tears. "I never meant for it to go this far." Anger and betrayal coursed through my veins as I realized the extent of his lies. The man I had trusted, the partner I had vowed to spend my life with, had been living a double life, jeopardizing everything we had built together. "How could you, Miles?" I cried, my voice trembling with anguish. After everything we've been through, how could you do this to us? His shoulders slumped, defeat etched into every line of his face. I never asked for this life, Harper. I needed an escape. In that moment, the weight of his betrayal was suffocating, threatening to crush the very foundation of our love. As I looked into his eyes, I saw a stranger, a man consumed by his own demons, willing to sacrifice everything for the thrill of the gamble. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a twisted trail of deception and heartbreak, a path that would test the very limits of my resilience and resolve, forcing me to confront the harsh reality of the man I had once called my soulmate. The weight of Miles's betrayal hung heavy in the air, suffocating me with each breath. As I stared into his tear-filled eyes, I saw a stranger, a man consumed by his own demons, willing to sacrifice everything we had built together for the thrill of the gamble. "How long?" I asked, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "How long have you been lying to me?" Miles couldn't meet my gaze, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Too long," he whispered, shame etching lines into his once vibrant face. In that moment, the full extent of his deceit hit me like a physical blow. The man I had trusted, the partner I had vowed to spend my life with, had been living a double life, jeopardizing everything for his addiction. As the shock began to wear off, anger took its place, a white-hot fury that coursed through my veins. "Get out," I spat, my hands balling into fists at my sides. Miles's head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Harper, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" I shouted, the dam of emotions finally bursting. "How you've been gambling away our future. How you've been lying to me, day after day, while I poured my heart and soul into this family?" He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off, the words tumbling out in a torrent of hurt and betrayal. "No, Miles. I don't want to hear it. Not anymore." I took a deep, shuddering breath, steeling my resolve. "I want you out of this house. Tonight." A flicker of defiance flashed in his eyes, but it was quickly extinguished by the weight of his shame. Without a word, he turned and walked out, the sound of the door slamming behind him echoing through the empty silence. In the days that followed, I methodically untangled the web of lies Miles had spun, uncovering the full extent of his gambling debt and the secret life he had been leading. With each new revelation, the man I had loved slipped further away, replaced by a stranger whose actions had shattered my world. It wasn't until I stumbled upon a hidden stash of letters and photographs that the final, devastating truth came to light. Miles had been living a double life, with a secret family and children I had never known existed. As I stared at the smiling faces of the woman and 2 children in the photographs, a wave of nausea washed over me. How could he have done this? How could he have so callously betrayed not only me, but an entire other family? In that moment, something inside me shifted. The anger and hurt gave way to a burning determination for justice, for retribution against the man who had so thoroughly deceived us all. With a steely resolve, I began to piece together a plan, meticulously gathering evidence and reaching out to Miles's other victims, his first wife and children, who had been left in the dark about his double life. When I finally confronted him, Miles broke down, his carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of his lies. "Please, Harper," he begged, tears streaming down his face. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I was weak, and I lost control." But his pleas fell on deaf ears. The man I had once loved was gone, replaced by a shell of a human being consumed by his own selfish desires. In the end, my revenge was swift and merciless. I exposed Miles's gambling addiction and secret family to our friends and loved ones, watching as his reputation crumbled to dust. His first wife filed for divorce, and he found himself cut off from the very support system he had taken for granted. As for me, I channeled my pain into a newfound purpose, helping other families torn apart by addiction and deception. Through my work, I found redemption and a sense of closure, finally able to leave the twisted trail of heartbreak and betrayal behind me. Miles's fate was sealed, a cautionary tale of what happens when one allows their demons to consume them. And though the scars of his betrayal would never fully heal, I took solace in the knowledge that I had emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before.